Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Fact Channel. Tonight, we will drift slowly into the deep breathing heart of the earth, the forests, vast, ancient, and endlessly alive. They stretch across continents like a green ocean, whispering stories older than our species. Every leaf, every sigh of wind through branches, every distant call of a night creature is part of a grand and gentle rhythm that has never truly stopped. The forest does not hurry. It does not rush toward tomorrow. It moves in centuries, in rain cycles, in patient, deliberate renewal. As you listen, let your own breathing begin to follow that pace, slow, unhurried, timeless. The forest is not a single thing, but a web, billions of living beings woven together through light, soil, water, and chemistry. Beneath every step, the ground teems with unseen motion. Tiny roots stretch and coil. Threads of fungi link tree to tree, and the bodies of fallen leaves dissolve back into nourishment for those still reaching toward the sky. It is a place where decay is not an ending, but a continuation, where nothing is wasted and nothing is truly lost. Even silence here is not absence, but fullness, a living quiet that hums with invisible work. When you stand beneath the canopy, the air feels different. It moves more slowly. It smells of rain and soil and green things breathing. The oxygen that fills your lungs was exhaled only moments ago by the leaves above. You are, in that instant, part of a conversation billions of years old, a gentle exchange between your body and the living world that sustains it. Each breath is borrowed from the forest, and with each exhale, you give something back. This quiet partnership has been ongoing since life first found a foothold in the shadow of trees. Forests are more than a backdrop to human history. They are its foundation. Before there were cities or languages or fires in hearths, there were forests endless and mysterious. Our ancestors walked among them for thousands of generations, learning to read the soft signs of light through leaves, the hush of animals unseen, the scent of rain long before it arrived. Somewhere deep in our nervous system, we still remember that. The steady pattern of vertical trunks, the filtered light, the murmuring of wind through branches, it soothes us because it feels like home. Modern studies show that walking among trees slows the heart, lowers stress hormones, and steadies the rhythm of breathing. But the truth is simpler and older. Our bodies were shaped in forests, and they recognize their mother when they return. At night, the forest transforms. The last glow of the sun fades into soft indigo, and what was once a world of motion becomes a world of listening. The air cools, mist gathers in hollows. Small sounds become large, the crack of a twig, the rustle of unseen wings. In that darkness, the trees do not sleep. Their roots draw water, their leaves continue to breathe, and in the quiet soil, entire civilizations of fungi and bacteria hum with invisible energy. The forest is awake in ways our eyes cannot see. Its life does not depend on light alone, but on balance, the constant exchange of gases, minerals, and time itself. In every droplet of water resting on a leaf is a reflection of sky, a tiny lens of atmosphere captured for a moment before falling back to earth. The forest moves in circles, the circle of carbon, the circle of nitrogen, the endless recycling of life into life. A single fallen tree can nourish 1,000 others. Its body softens into moss, then soil, then root again. In the language of the forest, there is no word for waste. Everything is part of something larger, something perpetual. Even the light here has its own softness. It filters downward in shifting mosaics, dappling the ground in patterns that move like slow water. That rhythm, light, shadow, light again, is one reason our minds grow quiet among trees. It mirrors the rhythm of breath, the gentle alternation of inhaling and exhaling. To walk in a forest is to be reminded, without words, of how to breathe. If you listen carefully, the forest tells time differently than we do. To a tree, a year is a brief exhalation. A century is a single deep breath. The redwoods and pines that tower over northern coasts began growing long before our languages were born, and they may still be standing long after we are gone. Within their rings is the memory of centuries, droughts, storms, the slow passage of sun and snow. If you could run your hand along the grain of a fallen trunk, you would feel the grooves of history pressed into its body, years when rain was scarce, years when the air was thick with volcanic ash, years when it grew tall and unbroken toward the sky. There is something deeply reassuring about that scale of time. The forest reminds us that change is slow, that renewal requires patience, and that growth often happens in silence. It continues its quiet work, whether we're there to witness it or not. The sap still rises, the moss still drinks dew, the first rays of morning still warm the bark of sleeping trees. Life persists without spectacle, without demand for recognition. When rain begins to fall in the forest, the sound is like no other, 1,000 soft impacts layered upon one another. Some droplets strike leaves and slide down in shimmering lines. Others soak into moss and vanish without a trace. The canopy itself acts as a vast instrument, turning the storm into music. Every note has a different timbre: the hollow patter on leaves, the muted tapping on bark, the sigh of runoff through branches. Rain in a forest is not only water falling, it is the atmosphere remembering the sea. Every droplet has traveled an invisible path, from ocean to cloud to leaf, carrying the salt memory of the planet's ancient breath. At the level of roots and soil, the same rain becomes transformation. Each drop that seeps downward awakens. Countless organisms, bacteria, nematodes, mycelium, each one a small participant in the chemistry of renewal. Together they decompose the fallen, releasing the nutrients that feed new growth. The forest's strength lies not in what endures, but in what is shared. When you lie down in a forest, even for a moment, you can feel the hum beneath the ground. It isn't a literal sound, but a kind of presence, the low, steady vibration of life continuing. Trees sense one another's needs through electrical impulses traveling through their roots and fungal partners. They share carbon, nitrogen, and even defensive chemicals when one is attacked. To sit beneath a tree is to rest in the presence of something intelligent in a way that has nothing to do with thought, but everything to do with awareness. Some forests are ancient beyond comprehension, remnants of worlds that existed before humans, before mammals, even before flowers. Their spores and seeds have persisted through ice, ages, volcanic winters, and shifting continents. Walking among them is to move through time itself, to touch the living descendants of Earth's earliest breath. So as you listen tonight, let your mind wander among the trees. Imagine the air growing cool and damp. Picture light filtered through layers of green, the scent of pine and rain, the distant call of an owl echoing through still air. The forest is breathing, always has been, always will be. And as you breathe with it now, perhaps you will feel the edges of your thoughts soften, as if your own mind were part of that greater rhythm, one that never ends, one that invites you to rest. In this way, we begin. The story of the forest is not told in words, but in cycles, in the endless giving and receiving between earth and sky. Tonight, as we drift deeper into its quiet mysteries, we will explore the most relaxing facts about forests, those gentle truths that lull the body and soothe the mind. You need not remember them all. You only need to listen, to breathe, and to let the calm vastness of the forest carry you into sleep. 1. The forest never sleeps. The forest never truly sleeps. Even in the deepest hours of night, when human eyes see only darkness and stillness, the forest remains alive with its own quiet pulse. What seems like silence is only a thin layer stretched across a vast, breathing orchestra of motion. Beneath the still air, roots drink and release. Leaves respire softly into the cool dark, and the smallest lives, moths, beetles, worms, and invisible bacteria stir in endless rhythm. The forest rests, but it never stops. Its heartbeat continues beneath the soil, steady and ancient, as if the planet itself were inhaling through the trees. If you were to stand within it now, surrounded by the velvet hush of night, you might think nothing moves at all. Yet, if you listen closely, you begin to hear the hidden layers, the gentle crackle of bark expanding and contracting with temperature, the sigh of a breeze weaving through branches like water through 1,000 flutes, the whisper of wings overhead, soft and deliberate. Every sound feels far apart, yet perfectly connected, blending into a slow, breathing music. Even the air itself seems alive, infused with the steady exhalations of leaves and the moisture of unseen clouds drifting above. Each tree is awake in its own way. While sunlight sleeps, the work of darkness begins. Through the day, the forest gathered energy, sunlight transformed into sugars, water drawn upward from roots, minerals folded into tissue. But now, under the cool moonlight, that energy is shared. Trees open small pores along the undersides of their leaves, releasing oxygen and taking in carbon dioxide. Beneath the soil, their roots extend messages through networks of microscopic fungi, the mycorrhizal web that binds forest to forest. Through this invisible system, a tree that has found light can feed another growing in shadow. Nutrients move like thoughts, guided by chemical language, by intention written into evolution. A forest is not a crowd of individuals. It is one living being, composed of countless selves, sharing endlessly without keeping account. In the dark, animals follow their own paths through this living maze. The deer steps softly through ferns, pausing between every heartbeat to listen. Owls turn their round faces toward the sound of life below, eyes wide and golden in the dim. Insects emerge from bark crevices, carrying their fragile lights through the undergrowth. The entire forest becomes a quiet theater of movement and awareness, every creature guided by scent, vibration, and instinct older than memory. Where human senses end, another world begins, a world of touch, pressure, sound, and subtle chemistry. Beneath the moss, the true work continues. The soil breathes through millions of pores, exchanging air with the atmosphere. Bacteria feed, divide, and release carbon in slow whispers, while fungal threads reach out like fingers in the dark, linking one life to another. A single handful of earth here holds more living organisms than there are people on the planet. Each of them performs a small, specific act, decomposing, recycling, breaking down what once was, and preparing it for what will be. It is a quiet collaboration, one that turns every fallen leaf and broken branch into the foundation of tomorrow's forest. When rain begins to fall, the night deepens. The drops strike leaves, first soft percussion, and then the earth, where they sink into the waiting soil. The canopy filters the storm, turning it into melody. Water flows along branches, collects on moss, and trickles down trunks to the forest floor, carrying with it the scent of resin and wet stone. Beneath the surface, roots awaken, absorbing moisture molecule by molecule. Some of that water will travel upward for days before reaching the highest leaves, drawn by invisible tension. Every drop will be used, shared, or released, again as mist to form the next cloud. The forest is a circle without beginning or end. Rain turning to root, root turning to breath, breath turning to sky. Even decay here is not an ending. When a tree falls, it becomes something new. Its bark softens, its heartwood darkens, and within weeks, life moves in. Fungi lace through the timber, breaking it into nutrients. Moss carpets the surface, holding moisture. Beetles carve passageways, and in those hollow corridors, new seeds take root. The fallen giant becomes soil, and from that soil, saplings rise. Life folds itself inward, then outward again, endlessly patient, endlessly generous. In this way, the forest teaches us that stillness and transformation can exist together, that what dies does not disappear, but changes shape into something that will live again. In the absence of light, the forest glows in subtler ways. Certain fungi emit pale blue light from decaying wood. Fireflies drift among the trunks, blinking in soft patterns that seem like the breathing of stars. Even without sight, one can feel that radiance cool, rhythmic, alive. The dark forest hums not with fear, but with comfort, as if the earth itself were whispering reassurance through every leaf and root. The forest's night is not the same as our night. Time here moves differently. The seconds stretch, the hours blur. A single drop of dew might take minutes to fall. A root might grow a fraction of an inch while you sleep. Patience is the forest's native tongue. Its sense of time belongs to rain cycles, seasons, centuries. Trees that sprouted before your birth will still be standing long after your final breath, and their descendants will remember, through the slow logic of evolution, that they once shared this air with you. To walk here in darkness is to feel the boundary between self and world dissolve. The air you breathe passes through leaves moments later. The warmth from your body rises as vapor, joining the same clouds that will one day fall again as rain. Every exhalation, every quiet movement is part of the forest's pulse. The illusion of separation fades, replaced by the simple truth that you are made of the same elements, drawn from the same soil, sustained by the same breath. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the rhythm of it, the deep exhale of a sleeping planet. The trees sway not because of wind alone, but because of the slow heartbeat of weather and the distant tide of atmosphere pressing against the land. The forest moves as one body. You, too, are part of that motion now. Somewhere, deep within the earth, the roots of two ancient trees are touching. Between them, electric impulses travel faint, slower than thought, but carrying meaning nonetheless. One tree may be thirsty, another may have water to give. They share. The exchange is silent, invisible, yet it binds them together as surely as family. And in that unseen communion lies the forest's greatest truth: cooperation, not competition, is what allows life to endure. The forest never sleeps, and yet it is never restless. It is always doing, always becoming, always returning to itself. In its ceaseless rhythm, there is peace. When you breathe with it slow, steady, aware, you can feel that peace settle into you as well. Your thoughts quiet, your heartbeat slows, and the boundaries of your body soften until you too feel rooted. You become part of the stillness that moves, the life that never stops. So let yourself drift here for a while, among the trees that whisper through darkness. Feel their patience, their quiet purpose. They do not rush toward morning. They do not fear the night. They simply continue breathing, growing, waiting. And in that unbroken rhythm, there is a kind of eternal comfort, the understanding that nothing living is ever truly alone, and nothing ever truly sleeps. 2. Trees communicate through an underground network. Beneath the forest floor, where roots weave through shadowed soil and fallen leaves sink back into the earth, there exists a network so vast, so intricate, that it rivals the neurons of the human brain. It is the forest's hidden internet, a web of living connection linking one tree to another, unseen yet essential. Through this underground lattice of roots and fungi, the trees speak, not in words or sounds, but in chemistry and electricity, in the language of sugars and signals that has guided their survival for millions of years. The forest, though it appears silent, is alive with constant conversation. If you could step beneath the surface, if you could shrink yourself to the scale of a root tip and walk among those winding corridors, you would find yourself in a glowing world. Thin filaments of mycelium, the body of fungi, stretch through every pocket of soil, wrapping around roots in delicate threads. Some are as fine as silk, others spread for miles in fractal tangles. They connect tree to tree, species to species, carrying information, energy, and memory. What one root feels, another can soon know. Through these threads, forests share water during drought, exchange nutrients when one grows weak, and even warn of approaching danger. The discovery of this network began not with poetry, but with science. In the late 20th century, ecologists studying Douglas firs noticed something strange. Shaded saplings, too young and starved for sunlight, were still alive, thriving, even though they received little direct energy from the sky. When researchers traced their roots, they found they were fused with those of neighboring trees through mycorrhizal fungi. The larger trees were feeding the smaller ones, sending carbon and nitrogen through fungal bridges beneath the soil. This quiet generosity upended the idea that trees compete for resources. Instead, it revealed them as collaborators in a shared economy of survival. Every exchange follows a logic older than thought. The fungi benefit from this arrangement. 2. Receiving sugars the trees create through photosynthesis. In return, they deliver minerals and water from distant parts of the soil that roots alone could never reach. The relationship is symbiotic, both partners giving, both gaining. But it goes beyond mere transaction. Trees connected through these networks have been shown to alter their chemical behavior when one of their kin is stressed. If a pest begins to feed on the leaves of one tree, that tree releases distress signals through the network, triggering defensive responses in others nearby. Within hours, they start producing bitter compounds in their leaves, making themselves less appealing to insects. What looks like instinct at the surface is, beneath, a form of shared memory written into the soil. Some scientists call the largest, oldest trees mother trees. These giants, with roots that reach deep and wide, act as central hubs in the network. Their vast systems distribute nutrients to dozens, sometimes hundreds, of younger trees growing in their shadow. When one of these elder trees is injured or dying, it often sends a final surge of carbon to its offspring through the fungal threads, a parting gift of stored energy that helps the next generation take root. It is a slow, graceful passing of strength, not unlike the transfer of wisdom between elders and children. In this way, even death in the forest is not the end of connection, but its continuation. The network also carries subtle electrical signals, pulses of energy traveling from one root to another at speeds of centimeters per second. These impulses are faint echoes of the nervous systems found in animals. Though trees have no brains, no neurons, they still communicate through measurable voltages and changes in chemical gradients. When a root encounters a barrier or senses moisture, it sends information along this pathway. Neighboring roots respond, altering their growth direction as if conferring on which way to turn. The forest is not mindless. It is mindful in a way that does not depend on thought, a collective awareness distributed across billions of living strands. Imagine, then, the sheer complexity of it all. In a single forest, tens of thousands of trees may be connected in overlapping webs. Each species has its own dialect, its own rhythm of exchange. Some connections last for centuries, others are fleeting, dissolving when a fungus dies or a root breaks. Yet the overall network remains intact, resilient, adaptive, It expands after rain, contracts in drought, shifts its pathways as the soil changes. Like a living nervous system, it rewires itself in response to stress. And when humans walk above, unaware, each footstep passes over a world more intricate than any city. Even the smell of the forest, that deep, earthy scent that feels both ancient and clean, is part of this communication. When leaves are damaged or crushed, they release compounds called terpenes that drift through the air. Other plants sense them and prepare their defenses. It is a form of airborne speech, chemical and precise, allowing entire ecosystems to coordinate without a single sound. These messages mix with those that travel through the soil, creating a dual language of air and earth. The forest speaks through breath as much as through root. The mycorrhizal networks are ancient, far older than the trees themselves. Fossil evidence shows that 400 million years ago, when plants first began to colonize land, fungi were already guiding their roots through barren rock. The partnership allowed them to survive, to extract minerals from stone and hold water in dry winds. Without fungi, the earliest forests could not have existed. The same alliance continues today, unbroken across epochs, a living bridge between the microscopic and the immense. In some parts of the world, the networks grow to unimaginable scale. In Oregon, scientists discovered a single fungal organism spanning more than 2,000 acres of forest, making it one of the largest and oldest living things on Earth. Every tree within that expanse is connected through its filaments, nourished and sustained by its hidden presence. To walk through such a place is to move within one continuous being, thousands of trunks, millions of leaves, but one breath, one heartbeat, one conversation in countless voices. When a forest is cut down, the silence is not only above the ground. The network below breaks apart, its connections collapsing like severed nerves. It is more than the loss of trees. It is the loss of communication, of memory. In places where reforestation begins, the young saplings often struggle until the old fungal threads return. Slowly, patiently, they rebuild the channels of exchange. And when the first messages begin to pass again, the quiet hum of life, returning to life, the forest begins to remember itself. Standing within such a forest, one can sense this invisible architecture. The air feels charged, the ground soft yet alive beneath your feet. You are surrounded by trunks, but beneath those trunks lies an unseen city, one of infinite pathways, each one carrying the forest's heartbeat forward. Every breath you take, every faint breeze that moves through leaves, every scent of rain-soaked soil is part of this living conversation. The world beneath your feet is whispering, and if you grow still enough, you can almost hear it. In this way, the forest teaches a different kind of wisdom. It reminds us that strength does not always mean solitude, that survival depends on sharing, and that the quietest voices, those buried deep and unseen, often hold the structure of the world together. The network beneath the forest is not only a marvel of biology, it is an ancient metaphor for connection itself. Every root, every thread, every unseen pulse tells the same gentle truth: nothing thrives alone. And so, when you breathe in the scent of earth, or stand beneath a canopy and feel the pulse of green life around you, remember the hidden network working below. The ground is alive with conversation. The trees are speaking, sharing, remembering. Their voices move through soil and shadow, soft as a sigh, ancient as the rain. The forest is listening, the forest is thinking, and as you drift deeper into rest, your own breath may begin to join theirs, one more rhythm in the quiet song of connection that never truly ends. 3. The air in a forest can heal. The air inside a forest feels different. It carries a texture, a weight, a purity that the body recognizes even before the mind does. The moment you step beneath the canopy, something inside you loosens, your shoulders drop, your heartbeat slows, and the noise of your thoughts begins to fade. The change is not only psychological. The forest air is literally medicine, a quiet chemistry of molecules and moisture that the trees exhale into the world. Each breath among them is a kind of communion, an invisible act of restoration that flows as naturally as wind through leaves. Every tree breathes in its own rhythm. Through the day, leaves draw in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, transforming sunlight into the molecules that sustain nearly every life on Earth. But alongside this familiar exchange, another, subtler breath occurs: the release of volatile organic compounds known as phytoncides. These are the forest's aromatic messengers, the source of that sharp, clean scent that rises from pine needles after rain, or from resin-rich bark warmed by sun. To the trees, these molecules are tools of defense, warding off harmful microbes and insects. To us, they are something else, entirely natural healers, capable of easing tension, lowering stress hormones, and strengthening the immune system. When these airborne compounds drift into the lungs, they enter the bloodstream and interact with our physiology in profound ways. Scientific studies conducted in Japan and EPS, South Korea, where the practice of forest bathing Shinrin-yoku has been woven into daily life, show that time spent breathing forest air increases the activity of natural killer cells, part of the body's immune defense. Stress hormones such as cortisol fall, blood pressure stabilizes, the heart beats more gently. Even the brain responds, shifting from the restless waves of alertness to the slower, deeper rhythms of calm. The forest's breath becomes our own, and through that shared breathing, we heal. There is a reason we seek forests when we need to think, or grieve, or find stillness. The chemistry of the air is only part of it. The forest's architecture itself encourages tranquility. Light filters through leaves, scattering into a soft green glow that soothes the eyes and quiets the nervous system. The constant background noise, the murmur of wind, the rustle of branches, the distant call of birds, forms a natural form of white noise that synchronizes with our inner rhythms. Studies have found that even recordings of forest sounds can slow breathing and lower heart rate. The living forest does this effortlessly, its symphony of quiet frequencies aligning with the body's own patterns of rest. Every breath you take beneath trees contains a history. The oxygen molecules entering your lungs this very moment may have been released seconds ago by a maple leaf or a fern, or perhaps hours ago by a distant stand of pines carried here on invisible currents. The carbon you exhale will rise, drift, and eventually enter another leaf, another breath. This exchange is ancient, continuous, and reciprocal. You are not separate from the forest's air. You are part of it, completing the same cycle that connects every living thing on Earth. Moisture plays its part in this silent therapy. Forest air is often thick with humidity, infused with water vapor that rises from leaves in a process called transpiration. Each tree releases hundreds of liters of water each day, creating a microclimate that softens heat and stabilizes temperature. The mist that hangs between trunks in early morning or late afternoon is not a sign of stillness, but of breath, the collective exhalation of countless leaves. This moisture carries ions that interact with the air's electrical balance, producing a subtle charge that the human body can feel. It is the same reason mountain air feels invigorating and ocean breezes seem to lift the spirit. The forest air is alive in a physical sense, charged with the invisible particles that awaken and soothe all at once. The scent of the forest tells its own story. In pine woods, the air is filled with terpene molecules that lend a crisp, resinous fragrance. In tropical jungles, the chemistry is more complex, a blend of floral esters, earthy geosmin from damp soil, and the sweetness of decaying leaves returning to the cycle. These aromas do more than please the senses. They stimulate parts of the brain linked to memory and emotion, unlocking deep evolutionary responses. We evolved among trees. Their scents are woven into the oldest layers of our consciousness. To smell pine or moss or rain-soaked earth is to awaken a memory older than language, one that tells the body it is safe. Even the color of the air here matters. The canopy filters sunlight into green wavelengths, and the human eye, shaped by millennia of forest life, finds rest in that hue. Green light calms the optic nerve, reduces strain, and lowers the activity of the amygdala, the brain's center of fear and anxiety. The forest, in this way, does not demand attention as a city does. It invites it gently, allowing vision to soften, focus to expand, and awareness to rest without effort. This visual piece works in harmony with the air's chemistry, reinforcing the body's descent into calm. When rain comes, the air becomes even more medicinal. The impact of drops on soil releases microscopic aerosols filled with plant oils, compounds from bacteria called actinobacteria. Together, they create petrichor, that distinctive scent of earth after rain. Inhaling it triggers a cascade of relaxation in the brain, lowering blood pressure and inducing a feeling of comfort. It is as though the forest, refreshed by water, exhales gratitude, and in breathing it in, we join in that gratitude too. Every storm leaves the air richer, cleaner, and more healing than before. But forest air does more than calm the mind. It shapes the world's climate. The vapors and organic particles released by trees rise into the atmosphere and act as seeds for clouds, influencing rainfall patterns far beyond the forest's edge. The Amazon, often called the lungs of the planet, creates half its own rain through this process, its endless breath becoming weather. To breathe in such a place is to share in the atmosphere's very creation, to feel the boundary between organism and environment dissolve. The air heals us because it belongs to the same cycle that sustains the planet. At night, when the light fades and the wind slows, the forest's breath deepens. The temperature drops, the air thickens with scent and dew, and a subtle equilibrium returns. Trees release less moisture, conserving their energy, yet the atmosphere remains full of life, saturated with oxygen, faint fragrances, and negative ions. The darkness makes the act of breathing more conscious. You can feel the coolness as it enters your nostrils, the slight tingle at the back of your throat, the slow spread of calm through your chest. Each breath is a bridge between the human and the more than human world, between thought and the wordless intelligence of nature. Even the act of walking here becomes part of the therapy. With every step, you stir the air, releasing fresh waves of scent from crushed needles and leaves. Your movements mix with the forest's currents, making you an instrument in its endless symphony of breath. You inhale what the trees exhale. You exhale what they will soon take in. It is a shared respiration, an invisible rhythm that continues whether you notice it or not. The forest does not need you to breathe with it, it simply welcomes you when you do. There is comfort in knowing that healing does not always come from effort. It can arrive quietly, through the simple act of presence. Standing beneath the trees, your lungs filling with their fragrance, you are already participating in the oldest medicine known to life. The cure is not in a bottle, not in words, not in the rush to understand. It is in the air itself, the calm chemistry of green life, giving itself away. And so, when you find yourself weary, when the noise of the world feels too sharp, remember the forest. Step beneath its canopy, or close your eyes, and imagine the air that lives there cool, fragrant, shimmering with unseen particles of kindness. Inhale slowly, exhale gently. Let the forest breathe for you and through you. Feel the stillness gather in your body, the calm rising with each breath, as though the entire forest were exhaling through your heart. In this way, the air heals. Not as a miracle, but as a reminder that you and the trees have always been sharing the same breath, and that peace has always been waiting there, in the space between inhale and exhale. 4. Forests create their own weather. When we look at a forest from above, an endless sweep of green rolling beneath clouds, it is easy to think of it as something passive, a receiver of sunlight and rain. But this is not the whole truth. The forest is not simply shaped by the weather. It shapes the weather in return. Every tree, every blade of moss, every hidden root is part of a vast atmospheric engine that quietly stirs the air, draws moisture from the ground, and sends it drifting skyward again as clouds. In this way, forests breathe not only for themselves but for the planet, creating rain and regulating temperature with the patience of the earth itself. Deep within a forest, the air carries a kind of softness you can feel against your skin. It is neither too dry nor too heavy, but balanced in a way that feels almost deliberate. That balance is the result of transpiration, the process by which trees release water vapor through countless tiny pores on their leaves. Each tree exhales thousands of gallons of water every year. Multiply that by the millions of trees in a single forest, and you begin to see the scale of this invisible ocean rising from the ground to the sky. It is this steady, rhythmic exhalation that builds the humidity above canopies and seeds the clouds that will eventually return as rain. The cycle is continuous, a conversation between soil and sky. In the Amazon, this conversation is so vast that the forest makes much of its own rainfall. Moisture pulled from the ground by deep roots rises through the trunks and into the leaves, where it evaporates into warm air. The vapor drifts upward and condenses, forming clouds that move with the winds and fall again as rain, often within the same region. The process repeats endlessly, sustaining the lush green world below. Without it, even the great rivers would dwindle. The forest is both the source and the consequence of its own climate, a self-sustaining miracle of chemistry and breath. On days when the sun is strong, the exchange grows more intense. The canopy drinks in light, heating the air around it. Warm, moist air begins to rise, drawing cooler air from the ground to replace it. The result is a constant circulation, a miniature weather system unfolding within every grove. These small, invisible currents join together, forming larger ones that eventually influence regional winds. Forests cool the land beneath them, shade the rivers, and even alter the direction of storms. They are, in every sense, architects of air. When the first drops of rain return to the trees that summoned them, they meet an intricate web of branches and leaves. Each drop may fall and be caught a dozen times before it finally reaches the soil. This dance slows the rainfall, preventing erosion and allowing the ground to drink deeply. Some water is held by moss and bark. Some flows along trunks and roots. Eventually, it gathers again underground, feeding the same reservoirs that nourish the trees. What fell from the sky will rise again, and what rose will fall. The forest is a perpetual motion of water, light, and air, an ecosystem that recycles the atmosphere itself. If you could listen to this exchange in slow motion, it might sound like the breathing of a planet, the sigh of mist rising at dawn, the deep exhale of evening rain, the whisper of water moving downward through roots. All of it forms a rhythm older than mountains. Forests do not merely endure the weather, they compose it, note by note, with a patience we can hardly imagine. The humidity above them shapes the patterns of clouds that drift across continents, carrying traces of their breath thousands of miles away. In this way, a rainforest in South America can influence rainfall in Africa, and the pine forests of Siberia can cool winds that sweep across oceans. Even the smallest plants play their part. Ferns, mosses, and undergrowth add to the collective exhalation, releasing moisture from every surface. Their contribution is subtle but constant, filling the forest air with vapor that blurs the boundaries between ground and sky. On certain mornings, this moisture condenses into mist that drifts through the trees like a living veil. The forest, still and silvered, seems to breathe visibly for a while. In these moments, the world feels suspended, as if time itself were pausing to watch the sky being born from the earth below. The chemistry of the forest's breath is equally intricate. Along with water vapor, trees release tiny organic particles, microscopic aerosols, that serve as nuclei for cloud formation. These particles, made of resins and other natural compounds, help droplets gather in the air. Without them, much of the moisture would drift away, invisible and lost to space. With them, it becomes clouds, and clouds become rain. Even in the smallest exhalation, the forest shows its artistry, sculpting clouds from the simplest ingredients of life. Temperature, too, bends to the forest's will. During the day, leaves absorb sunlight, but reflect much of it as gentle, diffused warmth, preventing the ground from overheating. At night, the same canopy holds the day's heat close to the soil, creating a steady microclimate that shelters countless species. This moderation extends outward, balancing weather across entire regions. Where forests thrive, extremes of heat and cold are softened. Where they vanish, the land grows harsh, the air dry and still. The forest's gift is stability, achieved not through force, but through unending dialogue with the atmosphere. When lightning forks across a forested landscape, the connection between sky and soil becomes visible for an instant. The energy released in that flash drives nitrogen into the ground, fertilizing the very roots that will later exhale the moisture that formed the storm. Nothing here is random. Even chaos finds purpose in the endless conversation between tree and air. Every drop, every spark, every molecule is drawn into a loop of giving and return. In ancient times, people saw forests as the dwelling places of spirits and gods of weather, beings that brought rain or withheld it. In a way, they were not wrong. Though we now understand the physics, the truth is no less sacred. The trees are still rainmakers, their breath still the essence of creation. The old myths were only different languages for what science has since confirmed, that life itself can shape the sky. At night, when the winds calm and the stars appear between gaps in the leaves, the forest's weather does not stop. Dew forms on every surface as temperatures fall, coating leaves and webs with droplets that shimmer faintly in moonlight. The canopy traps this coolness, holding it close until morning. When dawn comes, the dew lifts as vapor, joining the first rays of sunlight in rising again toward the clouds. The cycle continues with perfect, unbroken grace, as if the forest were reciting a poem that has no end. In this quiet choreography, we can see the outline of something larger, the planet's own breath, made visible. Forests inhale carbon and exhale oxygen, inhale water and exhale mist, inhale heat and exhale coolness. They are the Earth's lungs, heart, and skin all at once. Without them, rainfall would falter, air would stagnate, and the rhythm of climate would fall out of tune. With them, the world remains alive and balanced, every gust of wind carrying the memory of trees. So the next time you feel a breeze pass across your face, imagine where it began. Perhaps it was born in the shade of a great cedar, or within the steaming canopy of a rainforest at dawn. Perhaps it carries the faint scent of pine resin or wet soil, a trace of the forest's breath, traveling across continents to reach you. Every breath you take carries molecules that were once part of a leaf, part of a raindrop, part of a living conversation between earth and sky. You are breathing the memory of forests, and through that breath, you are part of their weather too. 5. The forest floor is a universe of life. Beneath the green world of leaves and light lies another, quieter world, the forest floor. It is darker here, cooler, layered with centuries of fallen leaves, each one returning to the soil that first gave it life. From a distance, it may seem still, but if you could kneel down and look closely, you would see a vast cosmos unfolding at your feet. Every inch of soil is a planet, every grain a galaxy of life. Ants, fungi, roots, moss, and microbes all coexist in a choreography so complex it makes the stars above seem simple. This is not merely dirt. It is the living foundation of the forest, the unseen engine that recycles death into birth, turning decay into the raw material of growth. When a leaf falls from a tree, its journey does not end. It drifts slowly through the air, curls upon itself as it lands, and begins to change. Invisible fungi take root within it, softening its veins and transforming its structure. Bacteria follow, dissolving it further. Tiny insects arrive to chew what remains, and their droppings become food for even smaller organisms. Within weeks, the leaf that once caught sunlight is gone, absorbed into a dark, rich layer of humus. And from that humus, the roots of saplings will drink, and the circle of life continues, seamless and unbroken. In one handful of forest soil, there may be more living organisms than there are people on the planet. Millions of bacteria, thousands of fungi, hundreds of nematodes and protozoa, all working together in a complex web of cooperation and consumption. Some break downward, others feed on those that do. Some fix nitrogen from the air, turning it into nutrients the trees can use. Others guard roots from disease, or help them absorb water. Every one of them plays a part in the quiet architecture of renewal. Without them, the forest would choke on its own abundance. With them, it breathes, forever reborn. Moss covers much of this world like a living carpet. It softens stone and bark, holding water in its delicate green fibers. Beneath its surface, small insects and worms move through tunnels thinner than a thread. Moss slows the flow of rain, allowing moisture to linger long after storms have passed. It shields young roots from drying winds and keeps the air cool and damp. In many forests, moss is one of the oldest inhabitants. It colonizes bare rock after glaciers retreat, turning desolation into life. To touch it is to touch the memory of beginnings, the first whisper of green on a once barren earth. Here and there, fallen branches lie in quiet disarray, covered in lichen and fungi. They are often called nurse logs, for they cradle new life upon their decaying bodies. Seeds drift into the cracks of rotting wood and find there a perfect home, rich, moist, and full of nutrients. Moss blankets the surface, drawing water and forming a cradle for roots. Tiny mushrooms sprout overnight, feeding on the softening bark. In a few years, a new tree begins to rise where the old one fell, its roots feeding on the remains of its predecessor. Death is never waste here. Every ending becomes a beginning again, every fallen trunk a nursery for the future. The mushrooms that appear after rain are only the visible tips of a much larger organism. Beneath the ground, their mycelial threads stretch outward in every direction, weaving through soil and stone. Some extend for miles, forming one of the largest living networks on Earth. These fungi are the alchemists of the forest floor. They digest wood, break down minerals, and release nutrients back into circulation. Their work is slow but relentless. Over centuries, they turn rock into soil, soil into forest, and forest into air. Even as they decompose, they are creating the conditions for new life to thrive. In the damp darkness under logs, beetles carve their paths, recycling what the trees have left behind. Termites and ants move through organized colonies, turning fallen matter into soil with astonishing precision. Every movement serves a purpose, every act a contribution to the system's balance. What looks like chaos, the constant activity of insects, worms, and roots is, in truth, a grand order, a harmony of necessity. The forest floor is not random. It is a perfectly tuned machine that runs on the energy of transformation. Light here is rare and precious. It filters through the canopy in narrow beams, falling across the ground like liquid gold. Wherever it touches, new growth appears, seedlings unfurling delicate leaves, ferns spreading their fronds, small flowers daring to bloom in the dim. These brief patches of brightness are moments of opportunity. A young plant might wait for years for a fallen tree to open a gap in the canopy above, allowing just enough light to reach its waiting leaves. Until then, it lives quietly, surviving on what little energy it can gather, patient as time itself. The forest floor teaches endurance, the art of waiting, of trusting in the slow certainty of light's return. The scent of this world is unlike any other. It is deep and ancient, a blend of decay and renewal, of rain-soaked earth and the faint sweetness of growth. It is the smell of cycles continuing without interruption. Geosmin, a compound released by soil-dwelling bacteria, gives the air its earthy fragrance after rain. Breathing it in is like inhaling the essence of life itself, the reminder that we, too, are made from these same elements, destined one day to return to them. The forest floor, in its humility, reminds us that creation and destruction are not opposites, but partners. Beneath the surface, roots move as if alive in thought. They seek out moisture, avoid stones, and respond to one another through the language of chemicals and touch. Some intertwine with fungal threads to form symbiotic partnerships. Others extend alone, reaching toward unseen reservoirs of water. They form a slow, silent network of awareness, sensing the world through pressure and vibration. In this underground labyrinth, the forest's mind is always awake, translating the signals of rain and drought, abundance and scarcity, into the decisions that sustain the whole. On misty mornings, when the forest floor steams softly with evaporating dew, the line between life and atmosphere blurs completely. Water rises in thin, twisting ribbons, joining the breath of the trees above. The air becomes heavy with scent, dense with invisible spores and fragments of life. Everything feeds everything else. Even the air we inhale carries traces of the soil, the microscopic remnants of leaves, bark, and living dust. To breathe in a forest is to take part in its endless digestion of the world. In temperate forests, fallen leaves form thick mats that cushion every step. Beneath them, the world teems with decomposers, springtails, mites, millipedes, all feeding and breaking down what once was. In tropical forests, the layer is thinner, quickly consumed by organisms that never stop working. Either way, the process is unceasing. What falls today becomes tomorrow's nourishment. The forest floor does not know stillness, only transformation. Its silence is an illusion, for beneath it everything is speaking, moving, remembering. This hidden layer of life supports all that stands above it. The tallest trees owe their height to the smallest microbes. The vast canopy depends on what happens in the dark, moist soil where sunlight never reaches. The floor of the forest is its heartbeat, steady, patient, tireless. Without it, nothing could grow. Without it, even the air above would lose its sweetness. Every breath we take, every breeze that stirs through leaves, is connected to the invisible work happening here beneath our feet. And so, when you walk through a forest, look down, notice the tapestry of moss, the intricate decay of wood, the soft give of the ground. You are walking not on the earth, but on a living skin, a layer of creation so deep and complex that every step touches 1,000 forms of life. Beneath you, the forest dreams and labors, turning what has fallen into what will rise. It is a universe unseen, yet ever present, patient as eternity, where death and life dissolve into one another like mist into rain. 6. Trees grow toward the light, even in darkness. In the deepest reaches of the forest, far below the glittering canopy where sunlight dances in shifting gold, there are places where light barely touches the ground. Here, the air is cool and damp, thick with the breath of leaves and the scent of earth. Shafts of light filter through in rare, trembling columns, moving with the breeze as if alive. In these dim corridors, young trees wait, their slender stems lean, twist, and reach upward, seeking even the faintest whisper of brightness. They grow not by sight, but by faith, drawn toward something they cannot yet feel, but somehow know is there. The forest teaches them patience. It teaches them how to wait in shadow, to gather strength in stillness, to trust in the return of light. When a seed first falls to the ground, it begins in darkness. Buried beneath leaves and soil, it cannot see the sky. Yet within its tiny shell lies a perfect map, a memory of direction. Even without sunlight, it knows which way to turn. The root grows downward, feeling gravity like a silent song, anchoring itself in the cool earth. The shoot grows upward, guided by a faint pull, a sense of warmth that it has never touched. This quiet instinct is phototropism, the movement of life toward light. Long before the first leaf unfurls, the seed is already reaching, stretching toward the promise of illumination. In the deep shade of the understory, this journey is slow. The forest is a hierarchy of light. The tallest trees claim the sun, spreading vast crowns that filter the rays into fragments. Beneath them, smaller trees gather what they can, the broken gleam of reflected light that falls in scattered patterns. Some saplings grow for decades in this half-shadow, their leaves wide and thin to catch what little brightness slips through. Others conserve their energy, waiting quietly until age or wind brings down a giant above them. When that moment comes, when the canopy opens and light floods through the gap, they awaken. After years of restraint, their growth surges like a tide released. The forest is full of these hidden stories, slow dramas unfolding in silence, patience rewarded by sudden abundance. Light is more than energy here. It is language, color of light, its angle, its rhythm through the day. All of it tells the trees where they stand in time. In morning, light is cool and blue, signaling the start of work. By afternoon, it turns golden and strong, urging leaves to open their pores, to draw in carbon and release oxygen. At dusk, it softens again, telling the forest to rest. Even in the dimmest shadows, plants can sense these changes. They feel the shift in wavelengths, the slow turn of day into night. They respond not with thought, but with movement, a bending of stems, an adjustment of leaves, a deepening of color. Each tree is a clock wound by sunlight. Even in darkness, it remembers the rhythm. In certain forests, where the canopy is dense and ancient, light becomes a rare treasure. Only 1 or 2% of the sun's energy reaches the ground. Yet life flourishes even here. Ferns unfurl their fronds in the half-light. Moss glows with its own soft green, as if storing the memory of brighter days. Fungi bloom from fallen logs, feeding not on sunlight, but on decay. Bioluminescent spores shimmer faintly at night, turning the forest floor into a field of stars. In these hidden realms, life finds ways to glow without fire. Even where no direct light falls, the forest invents its own form of radiance. Trees growing in shade are masters of efficiency. Their leaves contain more chlorophyll, the pigment that captures sunlight, than those exposed to full sun. This allows them to make the most of every photon that touches them. Their cells are arranged like tiny mirrors, bending and scattering light deeper into the tissue. Even the angles of their leaves are strategic, tilted just enough to catch the faint reflections from surrounding foliage. It is a quiet ingenuity born from necessity. The forest does not waste what is rare. It learns to live within its limits. When the light finally reaches the waiting saplings, the transformation is almost invisible at first. Growth begins deep within the trunk, in the exchange of sugars and water, in the slow expansion of cells. Day by day, the shoots lengthen, their leaves spreading wider, their colors deepening from pale yellow to full green. Soon, the once hidden sapling stands taller, its crown rising toward the canopy. In time, it will join the great network of branches above, filtering the light for others below. What was once shadow becomes shelter. What once reached upward now gives shade. In this way, the forest grows not only in height, but in compassion, each generation, shaping the conditions for the next. Even in darkness, growth continues. Deep beneath the ground, roots extend through the soil, feeling their way around stones, toward water, toward the unseen nutrients that sustain them. Roots grow without light, guided by touch and scent and gravity. They are the forest's hands, constantly reaching, exploring, sharing. Through them, energy passes between trees. One might think that in the absence of sunlight, life would pause. But beneath the surface, the opposite is true. Night is a time of building. What the tree gathers during the day, the sugars and gases made by leaves, is sent downward through the trunk to feed the hidden network below. The darkness becomes a workshop of creation. There are trees that have learned to live almost entirely in shadow. In the cool forests of the far north, conifers grow tall and close, their needles designed to capture diffuse light. In tropical jungles, some plants climb the trunks of giants, using them as ladders to reach the canopy. Others grow in the perpetual twilight of the understory, their leaves broad as hands, absorbing the faint reflections from every direction. Each adaptation tells the same story, that life will always find its way toward illumination, no matter how faint or far. To watch a young tree grow in such conditions is to witness faith made visible. For years it may appear still, no taller than your knee, its leaves gathering dust, its trunk fragile. Yet inside, invisible changes are taking place. Each cell adjusts to the scarcity, refining its processes, building resilience. When at last the light returns, the response is immediate and exuberant. Growth surges upward, unstoppable. The waiting was not wasted. The darkness was a teacher. Humans, too, have known this lesson. In our own seasons of shadow, when clarity feels distant and time seems slow, we forget that growth can happen without light. But like the forest's saplings, we are learning even then quietly, unseen, preparing for the next opening in the canopy. The forest reminds us that reaching for light is not always about speed or success. Sometimes it is about persistence, about holding one's place in the dim and trusting that brightness will come again. When the wind stirs through the canopy, the shafts of sunlight move across the forest floor like golden rivers. For a moment, everything glows: moss, roots, leaves, the slow curve of a trunk, catching the light. Then the clouds shift and darkness returns, gentle and complete. But nothing here mourns the loss. The trees know the light will return, as it always does. Their growth continues in its quiet rhythm, upward and outward, guided by a memory older than the sun itself. In this way, the forest teaches the deepest kind of patience. It shows that even in darkness, life moves toward light, not blindly, but faithfully. Every seed, every root, every leaf carries that instinct, the desire to reach, to grow, to open. to trust that somewhere above, beyond the shadow, there is brightness waiting, and that, in time, it will arrive. 7. Forests store ancient memories of air. Every forest holds a memory, not only in its soil and roots, but in the air itself. Each breath you take among the trees is touched by the past, carrying the faint echo of ages long gone. The air that moves gently through a forest has passed through countless leaves, countless lungs, countless centuries. It has flowed around mountains and across oceans, risen to the clouds, and fallen again as rain. It has been exhaled by animals that no longer walk the earth and absorbed by trees that grew when glaciers still held the poles. When you inhale in a forest, you are breathing time. You are drawing into your lungs the ancient memory of the world. Every ring within a tree is a journal entry written in the quiet language of wood. The trunk remembers each year, recording it as a thin band of color and density. Wide rings mark seasons of abundance, years when light was generous and rain was kind. Narrow ones mark struggle, droughts, storms, fires, or cold. Together, they form a timeline that stretches backward for centuries. If you were to touch those rings, tracing them from the bark toward the core, you would be traveling through the life of the forest itself, year by year, to the very beginning. And within each ring lies the story of the air the tree once breathed, the ratios of carbon and oxygen, the chemistry of the atmosphere as it once was. Trees do not forget the air. They keep it sealed within their bodies, a diary of invisible winds. Deep in the wood, microscopic bubbles of air become trapped during growth. These tiny pockets hold the atmosphere of the year they were formed. Scientists studying these pockets can read the history of climate, measuring the levels of gases that surrounded the tree at different points in time. Through them, we know that forests once breathed an atmosphere far richer in oxygen, that the air we know today has been shaped slowly, endlessly, through the work of green things. Every trunk standing before you is a living archive, its very tissue, a record of how the world once felt to breathe. But the forest's memory is not limited to the wood. It lives in the soil, in the molecules that rise from decay and return to the sky. Carbon, drawn down from the air through photosynthesis, is stored for years, decades, sometimes millennia, in roots and humus. When leaves fall and decompose, some of their carbon lingers, locked in the dark earth, while some escapes again as breath, completing the circle. The soil beneath your feet holds more carbon than the atmosphere above it, an invisible library of the planet's past climates, stored grain by grain, moment by moment. Each molecule tells a story of sun and shade, of fire and frost, of ancient forests that lived and died to make this one possible. In certain forests, where trees have lived undisturbed for centuries, the air itself feels heavier, thicker somehow, not unpleasant, but full. The leaves release volatile oils that give the atmosphere its scent, but there is more to it than chemistry. You can sense the age in the air, the quiet accumulation of seasons layered upon one another. Every breeze that passes through seems to carry whispers of what it has touched, the calls of birds long gone, the sigh of storms that once rolled through these same hills. The forest exhales, and the air becomes a mixture of present and past, a tangible connection between what is living now and what once was. When trees breathe in carbon dioxide, they take in more than gas. They take in the signature of their age. The carbon atoms they absorb may have once belonged to the breath of a whale, a volcano, a fern, or a human being. Over time, these atoms become part of wood, woven into the cellulose and lignin that make up the tree's body. A forest, in this way, is a physical embodiment of the atmosphere's memory, a sculpture made from the sky itself. When you touch the bark of an old oak or cedar, you are touching air that once drifted through ancient lands, now crystallized into form. Even the wind carries traces of this deep memory. As it moves through the canopy, it gathers the scents of resin, pollen, and soil, blending them into a breath that feels both new and eternal. The smell of pine needles warming in sunlight, the damp aroma of fallen leaves after rain, the faint sweetness of moss, all are signatures of the endless exchange between air and earth. Each fragrance is a reminder that the forest and the atmosphere are not separate things but halves of the same living cycle. The trees shape the air even as the air shapes them, and through their intertwined existence, memory persists. When a tree dies and decays, its stored air is released once more. The carbon it gathered returns to the atmosphere, mingling again with the global breath of life. Some of it will rise into the sky, become cloud, drift to another continent, and fall again as rain upon new saplings. In this way, the forest's past literally feeds its future. The air of ancient trees becomes the nourishment of newborn leaves. Each generation inhales the legacy of those before it. The forest breathes itself forward through time, a continuity that knows no interruption. Even fire, which seems to erase so much, participates in this remembering. When flames consume a forest, they do not destroy its story, they release it. The carbon that was bound in wood returns to the sky, where it becomes part of the next cycle of growth. The ashes enrich the soil, preparing it for new roots. What seems like loss is simply another form of communication between earth and air. The forest burns, and in that burning, it speaks back to the atmosphere, telling it what has been and what is to come. Humans are part of this conversation too, though we often forget it. The oxygen that fills our lungs was made by trees. The carbon we exhale is taken up by leaves. Our breath is a small but continuous contribution to the great archive of air. Every time we stand beneath a tree and breathe deeply, we are adding our story to its memory. The molecules we release may one day be locked inside a growing trunk, preserved in wood for centuries. The forest will remember us, even if we never realize it. When night falls, the exchange continues. As temperatures drop, the forest exhales warmth and moisture, its collective breath forming mist that drifts through the trunks. The air glows faintly in moonlight, rich with the scent of soil and sap. You can almost imagine that what rises from the ground are the memories themselves, visible for a few fleeting moments before dissolving back into the sky. To stand in such a place is to feel surrounded by time, not as a line, but as a circle, breathing, infinite. The oldest trees hold this sense of eternity most strongly. Some have stood for 1,000 years, surviving storms, fires, and the rise and fall of civilizations. Within their rings lies the record of all those events. They have absorbed the air of every century, storing its trace deep within their hearts. To press your hand against such a trunk is to feel more than wood. It is to feel the pulse of history itself, slow and steady, still moving. These trees are the planet's lungs and its memory, the keepers of the breath that made us all. So the next time you walk among trees, pause for a moment and simply breathe. Let the air move through you, soft and cool. Remember that what you're inhaling has been part of 1,000,000 lives before yours, part of oceans and fires, of ancient forests and forgotten skies. Every breath is shared, recycled, and remembered. The forest is not just a place of green and shadow. It is the living archive of the earth's breath, the keeper of ancient air. To breathe within it is to become, for a moment, timeless. 8. A forest is a living soundscape. When you step into a forest, before the scent of pine or the texture of soil can reach you, the first thing that greets you is sound. It is not loud, not intrusive, but all-encompassing, a soft and endless symphony that seems to rise from every direction at once. The forest is alive with voices, each one distinct, yet woven so tightly together that they form a seamless whole. To listen here is to hear the earth breathing. Every rustle, every call, every shifting gust of wind is part of a living soundscape that has been playing for millions of years, a song older than language, older even than thought. The canopy above acts like the ceiling of a great cathedral. Leaves catch and scatter sound, softening it, transforming what might have been sharp or sudden into something hushed and resonant. The wind becomes a low organ note, the birds a choir, the insects a shimmer of strings. Even silence has a tone, a deep, round stillness that vibrates gently through the body. It is not emptiness, but fullness, a pause between phrases in an eternal composition. When the forest is quiet, it is not because nothing is happening, it is because everything is listening. During the day, the forest hums with light and motion. The songs of birds ripple through the branches like threads of gold. Each species has its own melody, some bright and clear, others low and repetitive. These songs are not random. They are conversation, territory, and affection expressed through air. Birds fill different acoustic spaces to avoid drowning each other out. The warbler's thin call weaving high among the leaves, the dove's coo settling low near the ground. Together they create layers, as though the forest itself were composing a harmony through diversity. The same pattern repeats everywhere, in jungles, in boreal woods, in the shaded groves of mountainsides, a universal music shaped by evolution and necessity. Between these voices lies a quieter language, one made not by animals, but by the trees themselves. When wind passes through a forest, each leaf vibrates slightly, producing faint tones that blend into a collective murmur. Trunks groan softly as they flex, roots creak as the soil shifts. These sounds are too low for the human ear to fully perceive, yet they are there infrasonic waves traveling through air and earth, carrying information from one end of the forest to another. Scientists have measured vibrations, moving through root systems, and even through the hollow channels inside trees. The forest quite literally hums, and every part of it, from the smallest sapling to the tallest cedar, contributes to that chorus. On the forest floor, another world of sound begins. The shuffle of small animals among leaves, the click of beetle shells, the slow, delicate cracking of decomposing wood. Rain adds percussion, 1,000 rhythmic strikes softened by moss and soil. A single drop landing on a fern creates a whisper that fades as another takes its place. The pattern seems random, but listen long enough and you will notice repetition, a heartbeat, a pulse. The forest is not chaotic. It moves with rhythm, the same rhythm that echoes inside your own chest. In the evening, the tempo changes. As the light fades, diurnal creatures quiet their songs, and the nocturnal voices rise in their place. Crickets begin their measured stridulation. Frogs call from unseen ponds, and somewhere in the distance, an owl answers the twilight with its haunting cry. The night forest becomes a slow, breathing symphony of contrast, pauses and notes, silence and sound. If you stay still enough, you can hear layers upon layers, the hum of insects like static beneath the deep, hollow tones of amphibians, the occasional snap of a twig as something unseen passes nearby. The forest at night is never truly dark and never truly quiet. It hums in a language that soothes more than frightens, a language that belongs to sleep and dream. Even the absence of sound here has its purpose. Between the calls and rustles are moments of complete stillness, when the entire forest seems to hold its breath. These pauses are ancient instincts, a response to predators or to weather the calm before a storm, the collective listening before change. In those suspended seconds, your own heartbeat seems to grow louder, syncing with the waiting quiet. It is in these silences that the forest's deeper music reveals itself, the pulse beneath the sound, the rhythm beneath the rhythm. Modern science has begun to understand how this constant vibration affects the human body. Studies show that natural soundscapes, especially those dominated by low, consistent tones like wind and water, can lower blood pressure and reduce anxiety. The brain's electrical patterns shift in response to these frequencies, moving from the restless activity of alertness to the slower waves of calm. In short, the forest teaches the nervous system to rest. Even recordings of its sounds, birdsong, rain, wind through leaves, can bring measurable relief to stress. But to be inside the real thing, surrounded by the living orchestra itself, is something deeper. It is as if the forest's sound becomes your sound, its rhythm your heartbeat. Every element here participates in the music of air. The streams that cut through the forest sing with their own fluid melodies, tumbling over stones, gurgling around roots, whispering in shallow bends. Water amplifies sound, carrying it through the trunks and branches, making the whole landscape vibrate. When wind moves across the water's surface, it adds a soft hiss, a gentle brush of harmony that merges with the leaves above. The forest does not need composers. Its score writes itself with every shift of temperature, every falling drop, every living breath. Sometimes, when you walk alone through the trees, you may hear something faint and familiar, a tone that seems to come from nowhere in particular. It might be the hum of insects, or the low frequency of wind, or perhaps just the distant memory of sound bouncing between trunks. It feels ancient, like the background noise of existence itself. This is the forest's ground tone, its eternal drone. It underlies every other sound, binding them together like gravity binds stars. It is the resonance of life continuing, not loud enough to demand attention, but impossible to silence. In winter, when snow falls over the forest, the music does not disappear. It changes. Snow absorbs high frequencies, muffling the air until every step sounds like a heartbeat in wool. The forest becomes a cathedral of stillness. You can hear the soft fall of flakes on branches, the muted creak of wood under weight, the occasional flutter of a bird shaking snow from its wings. Even here, in apparent quiet, the soundscape continues slow, minimal, sacred. The silence of winter is only another kind of song. When morning comes and light spills once again through the trees, the forest begins its new movement. Dewdrops slide from leaves, striking the ground with microscopic bells. Birds test their voices. The breeze stirs, finding its familiar melody. The day's composition begins again, slightly different, yet somehow the same. Every sunrise rewrites the music, and every night remembers it. The sound of a forest is never finished, because the forest itself is never finished. To listen deeply here is to participate in something timeless. It is to hear the planet remembering itself through wind and water, through leaf and life, through every vibration carried on the air. The forest's song has no beginning and no end. It is the continuous hum of existence. It calls us not to understand, but to feel, to be still enough that our own hearts can beat in rhythm with the world's. And so, the next time you find yourself among trees, close your eyes and listen. Let the layers unfold, the faint, the distant, the near. Let the wind carry your thoughts away, until what you hear is not sound but presence. The forest is a living soundscape, and when you listen with your whole being, you become part of its song. 9. Trees drink rain in two directions. Rain begins softly in the forest, like a memory returning. The first drops land with hesitant grace, brushing against leaves, tracing paths down bark, slipping into soil. Each one carries the sky's cool breath, each one a small gift to renewal. The forest greets it not as a stranger but as an old friend, for rain is its oldest companion, the rhythm by which all life here lives and breathes. Yet what is easy to forget, as the drops disappear into the shadows, is that trees do not merely drink from the ground, they drink from the sky as well. Water moves both upward and downward in a forest, threading through roots and leaves in opposite directions, forming a cycle as seamless as the beating of a heart. When the rain falls through the canopy, the trees catch it first. Broad leaves spread open, cupping the droplets before letting them slide downward in delicate lines. Some of the water evaporates instantly, turning to mist that rises again into the air. Some gathers at the tips of branches, glinting for a moment before falling. The sound is gentle, a soft percussion of countless impacts, blending into one continuous breath. But some of the rain never reaches the ground at all. Trees absorb it directly through their leaves, pulling it inward through microscopic pores called stomata. These tiny openings, invisible to the human eye, are the gateways through which the forest drinks from the sky. When moisture settles on a leaf's surface, capillary forces draw it into the plant's tissue. There it mixes with the sugars produced by photosynthesis, flowing into the intricate plumbing that connects every cell. Even fog and dew can sustain a tree this way. In coastal forests where rain is scarce, trees pull water from mist alone, their needles collecting droplets from the air. In deserts and cloud forests alike, the same principle holds. The sky gives, and the trees receive, even when the ground below is dry. This upward and downward movement of water is one of the quiet miracles of life on Earth, a dance so constant that we hardly notice it, yet without it, no forest could stand. Below the surface, another form of drinking unfolds. The roots, extending like fingers into the soil, search out moisture hidden between grains of sand and clay. They follow gradients of wetness, sensing where the earth is generous and where it is stingy. When they find water, they draw it upward with a force so delicate and yet so immense that it defies comprehension. Through narrow vessels within the trunk, water rises hundreds of feet against gravity, climbing through the capillaries of xylem tissue. The driving force is not pressure, but loss. The evaporation of water from leaves above creates a tension that pulls more upward from below. Each molecule leaving the leaf tugs another from the root, linking earth and sky through a chain of liquid connection. To imagine this process, picture an endless thread of water stretching from the deepest root tip to the highest leaf, unbroken and alive. Every drop that evaporates from the leaf's surface draws another upward from the ground. The entire tree becomes a single continuous column of water, a living straw through which the planet itself breathes. In this way, trees are not only drinkers of rain, they are its vessels, its transporters, its sculptors. They move water through their bodies and release it again into the air, shaping the very clouds that will one day return to them as rain. In tropical forests, where humidity clings to every surface, this exchange is constant. The trees there exhale so much water vapor that they create their own weather. Moisture lifted through transpiration gathers above the canopy, forming clouds that drift, condense, and fall once more as rain. In this closed loop, the forest drinks its own breath. A single drop of water may rise and fall many times before it leaves the ecosystem, cycling endlessly between sky and soil. The rain that lands on your skin in a rainforest today may have been exhaled by a tree just hours ago. Even in drier regions, trees find ways to drink from both directions. In the coastal fog forests of California and Chile, trees collect water from mist so effectively that it drips from their branches like steady rainfall. Their leaves are coated in microscopic hairs that catch droplets from the air, guiding them downward to the roots. At the same time, their roots draw what little moisture exists in the soil upward. The result is a double stream of nourishment, one from the heavens, one from the earth, meeting in the heart of the tree. At night, when the air cools and humidity rises, trees continue to absorb moisture from dew. This process, called foliar uptake, allows them to hydrate without sunlight. The still air and the absence of wind make it possible for water to linger longer on leaves, giving the trees more time to drink. In this way, the forest stays alive even in darkness, sustained by the soft generosity of night. You could say that the trees breathe water while they sleep. Sometimes, after a storm, you can see this exchange in motion. Drops hang from every branch, glimmering like glass beads. Slowly, they slide along veins and edges, tracing the contours of the leaf before disappearing into tiny pores. The surface darkens, drinks, then glows again as another drop takes its place. Beneath the canopy, the air feels thick, alive with moisture and scent, the perfume of wet bark and green life. It is easy to forget that while the forest appears to be resting, it is working ceaselessly. The trees are busy with their invisible labor, moving rivers through their veins, exhaling clouds into the sky. The same water that nourishes the forest also shapes its voice. When rain falls, the forest becomes an instrument, leaves 1,000 different drums, branches a soft percussion section, soil a resonant bass. Every sound depends on how the water lands, on what it touches and what it leaves behind. The forest and the rain compose their duet together, each note an act of renewal. To listen is to feel the pattern of exchange, the giving, the taking, the return. Through this endless cycle, the forest becomes both river and cloud, both sea and sky. The water it drinks from the soil has traveled through mountains, glaciers, and oceans before reaching its roots. The moisture it drinks from the air may have once risen from another forest half a world away. Nothing here belongs to one place alone. Every droplet carries a story of movement, of transformation, of the planet's unbroken breath. The tree is simply where those stories meet. Humans share this rhythm too. The water in our bodies is ancient, older than our species, older than the mountains we climb. The same molecules flow through us that once flowed through roots, through clouds, through rivers. When we stand in a forest during rain, we are reunited with that lineage, reminded of our place in the great hydrologic circle. We too drink in two directions, through the mouth that takes the water, and through the skin that feels it, absorbs it, remembers it. When the rain finally stops, the forest continues to shimmer. Droplets cling to leaves, reflecting light in tiny mirrors. The ground exhales steam as warmth returns. The air smells of growth and quiet satisfaction. Every tree glistens with evidence of its communion with the sky, each trunk a column of water linking heaven and earth. The rain is gone, but its presence remains stored in bark, in soil, in the memory of roots. And high above, where the last drops linger on the highest leaves, the trees still drink from the air, quietly, endlessly, without need or haste. The next time you find yourself standing beneath trees in the rain, look upward and let a drop land on your skin. Feel it travel from sky to leaf, from leaf to air, from air to you. In that moment, you are part of the same cycle that moves through every living thing. You are water rising and falling, feeding and being fed. You are, like the forest itself, drinking in two directions, earthward and skyward, endlessly. 10. Forests breathe carbon, so we can breathe oxygen. Every breath we take is a quiet collaboration, a shared act between our bodies and the trees. It feels so simple. Air flows in, air flows out, yet within that rhythm lies the most profound exchange on Earth. Every inhale is a gift from the forests. Every exhale, a return to them. We do not often think of it this way, but each lungful of oxygen we draw was once a whisper of light, transformed through the alchemy of leaves, and the carbon we release, invisible and weightless, becomes their food, their energy, their life. In this way, the planet breathes as one vast organism. Forests exhaling what we inhale. We exhaling what they inhale. It is the most ancient and essential of relationships, unbroken since the first green cell rose from the sea to meet the sun. When sunlight touches a leaf, a miracle begins. Within its thin surface, millions of chloroplasts awaken tiny green chambers filled with the machinery of life. They take in carbon dioxide from the air and water from the air, soil, and with the help of sunlight, they break and rebuild those molecules into something new. Sugars, oxygen, and energy are born in that quiet reaction. This process, photosynthesis, has been happening for over 3 billion years, shaping the very air that now sustains us. It was forests and the plants that came before them that filled the sky with oxygen, transforming the planet from a barren rock into a breathing world. Without them, the atmosphere would still be thin, acidic, and unkind to life. Every breath of clean air we take is a continuation of that ancient transformation. The balance between carbon and oxygen is delicate and sacred. When we breathe, we draw oxygen deep into our lungs, where it enters the bloodstream and nourishes our cells. In return, we release carbon dioxide, the waste of our respiration. To us, it is an end product, but to trees, it is sustenance. Through their leaves, they pull in that same carbon dioxide, dismantle it, and use the carbon to build their trunks, branches, and roots. The oxygen they no longer need is released back into the air, pure and invisible, waiting for another creature to draw it in. Each breath we take is linked to countless leaves exhaling at that same moment somewhere in the world. We and the forest share a single lung. If you could trace a molecule of carbon through time, you would see that it has traveled endlessly between air, water, stone, and life. It may have been exhaled by a human being thousands of years ago, absorbed by an oak, turned into wood, released again through fire, carried across an ocean, and then drawn into the breath of another person today. The same molecules that move through your lungs have passed through the bodies of birds, fish, and trees, through volcanoes, coral reefs, and ancient ferns. In a very literal way, we are breathing the memory of all who have lived before us. The carbon cycle is not a metaphor, it is the true bloodstream of the planet. Forests act as great lungs within this system. Through photosynthesis, they remove vast amounts of carbon dioxide from the air, locking it away in wood, bark, roots, and soil. A single mature tree can absorb hundreds of kilograms of carbon in its lifetime. Multiply that by the billions of trees across the globe, and you begin to understand the scale of their work. The world's forests absorb roughly 1/3 of all human-produced carbon each year, silently buffering the atmosphere against imbalance. Yet they ask for nothing in return but the simple chance to continue breathing. At night, when sunlight fades, the process changes but does not cease. Trees continue to breathe. Though in reverse, they take in oxygen and release a small amount of carbon dioxide as they metabolize the sugars they made during the day. The air within a forest at night is dense and cool, rich with scent and moisture. It carries both exhalation and inhalation, an equilibrium of life in motion. While animals sleep, the forest keeps breathing, its rhythm steady and eternal, blending creation and consumption in perfect proportion. When morning comes, the balance shifts again. The first light stirs the chloroplasts back to life, and oxygen begins to flow into the air in abundance. In this quiet exchange, the boundary between the human and the more than human dissolves. We are not separate from the forest. We are its continuation. Each of us is a leaf turned inside out, our lungs branching bronchi mirroring the shapes of tree limbs, our breath a reflection of theirs. The same physics that moves air through a canopy moves it through our bodies. The forest breathes through us as surely as we breathe through it. If you listen deeply in a forest, you can sometimes hear this truth in the rhythm of wind. The trees sway and sigh as air passes through their crowns, exhaling oxygen in a vast whisper. That same air will travel for miles, over hills and rivers, into cities and homes, into lungs. The oxygen atoms may not remember where they began, but the forest remembers. Every gust of wind is an act of giving, a gesture of quiet generosity. And when we exhale, sending our carbon dioxide back into the air, the trees receive it as a gift. What we discard, they transform into life. It is a relationship beyond gratitude, it is unity. Beneath the soil, this exchange continues in other forms. Roots interact with soil microbes that feed on carbon compounds, creating a thriving underground economy of nutrients. Fungi and bacteria convert organic matter into new chemical forms, some of which return to the air, while others become locked deep underground for centuries. In this way, forests not only breathe carbon, but also store it, holding the atmosphere's history within their bodies. A fallen tree may take decades to fully release its stored carbon, feeding countless lives as it does so. Even decay participates in the cycle of breath. The air within a forest feels different, not only because of its moisture and scent, but because it is constantly renewed. Each leaf, each patch of moss, each blade of grass contributes to the invisible purification of the world. Carbon dioxide levels are lower beneath dense canopies, oxygen levels higher. Breathing here feels easier, as though the air has just been made. And perhaps it may have been born only moments ago in the green glow above you, where sunlight met leaf and turned energy into air. The act of breathing in a forest is therefore both physical and spiritual. You are not just inhaling gases, you are partaking in creation itself. Yet this balance is fragile. When forests are burned or cut down, the stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere, upsetting the ancient harmony. The air grows heavier, the climate warmer, and the cycle wavers. But the solution is not despair, it is remembrance. To protect the forest is to protect the breath of the world. Each new tree planted, each patch of soil left rest, restores the planet's heartbeat a little more. Life will always seek balance, and forests are the body through which that balance is found, again and again. If you stand still among trees and breathe deeply, you may feel the subtle connection between your inhale and the rustle of leaves above. It is as if the forest is breathing with you, your lungs and its canopy expanding and contracting together. You might even sense, for a moment, that you are the same being, that the boundary between skin and bark is less real than it seems. The air moves freely between you, carrying your exhalation into the green, and returning the forest's gift to you again. To breathe, then, is to remember this relationship. It is to honor the slow, patient exchange that sustains all life. The forests breathe carbon so that we can breathe oxygen, and we, in turn, complete the circle. The next time you take a breath, imagine the leaves that made it possible, their silent labor, their endless generosity. Imagine the sunlight that powered it, the roots that anchored it, the ancient rhythm that has never ceased. And as the air fills your lungs, let yourself feel gratitude for this shared breath, the breath of the earth itself, passing through you, reminding you that you are part of its unbroken song. 11. Old trees nurture the young. In the deep heart of the forest, age is not a solitary thing. It is not measured only in rings or height, or the span of shadow a tree can cast. Age here is a kind of wisdom, a quiet generosity that moves through roots and soil and air. The oldest trees, those whose bark carries the grooves of centuries, whose branches hold the memory of storms, are not isolated elders standing above the rest. They are caretakers, guardians, and givers. Their strength does not lie only in their towering presence, but in the invisible threads of connection that spread beneath them, reaching into the lives of the young. Every forest lives because its elders choose to share. If you were to peel back the layers of soil beneath an old tree, you would find a hidden world of communication. The great roots extend outward like veins, and intertwined with them are the fine filaments of mycorrhizal fungi, the forest's unseen network. Through this living web, trees pass messages and nutrients from one to another. The older trees, with their deep roots and vast reserves of carbon, send sustenance to the saplings growing in their shade. When sunlight is scarce and the young struggle to survive, the elders feed them, delivering sugars and minerals through the fungal threads. It is a quiet, continuous generosity, a lifeline flowing through the earth. Scientists call these ancient giants mother trees. It is not a poetic exaggeration, but a truth written in the chemistry of soil. They are the central hubs in the underground network, the nodes through which information and nourishment flow. When a mother tree senses through chemical signals that one of her kin, a seedling born of her own seeds, is struggling, she responds by sending extra carbon, nitrogen, and water toward it. She knows which saplings are her offspring and gives them more. This knowledge is not conscious in the way humans understand it, but it is deeply intelligent, a kind of biological empathy that has evolved over millions of years. To the human eye, the forest might appear competitive, each tree reaching for light, each root seeking space. Yet beneath that visible struggle lies a profound cooperation. The trees are not simply surviving beside one another, they are sustaining one another. When one tree falls ill, its neighbors often send it nutrients to help it recover. When disease spreads, the healthy communicate warnings, triggering defenses in those nearby. And when an old tree is dying, it releases what remains of its stored energy into the network, feeding others in its final act. Death, here, is not a withdrawal, but a contribution, last, silent offering to the life continuing around it. These acts of sharing shape the very structure of the forest. Where mother trees thrive, diversity follows. Different species grow together, each contributing something the others need. Broadleaf trees enrich the soil with nutrients from their fallen leaves. Conifers provide shade and stability. Mosses keep moisture alive at the roots. The forest is a web of mutual support, and at the center of that web stand the elders, those whose roots have touched the deepest layers of time. Through their connections, they hold the forest together, binding generations into one living whole. Imagine the patience of such a being, to stand through centuries of storms, droughts, fires, and regrowth, watching countless generations rise and fall at your feet. A tree that has lived 500 years has seen the landscape change more than any creature that walks upon it. It has felt the slow warming of the earth, the shifting of seasons, the coming and going of species. And through it all, it has remained a constant presence, absorbing, recording, adapting. Its roots have entwined with those of younger trees, guiding them through times of scarcity, sheltering them from wind and frost. In this way, wisdom in the forest is not abstract, it is physical, embodied in the slow pulse of nutrients flowing from one life to another. Sometimes, you can see the evidence of this nurturing in the patterns of the forest floor. Around an old tree, clusters of saplings grow stronger, greener, taller than those farther away. Their leaves are richer in chlorophyll, their stems more supple. Even when light is scarce, they persist, fed by what the elder offers beneath the surface. In this circle of care, generations overlap the living, sustained by the dying, the new carried forward by the old. It is a rhythm that never truly ends, a slow choreography of giving and receiving that defines the forest's heart. Above ground, the relationship continues in quieter ways. The canopy of the elders filters sunlight, allowing only what the young can bear. Too much light can scorch a tender leaf, too little and it will wither. The branches above act as guardians of balance, softening the extremes of weather. Their great trunks also serve as windbreaks, shielding the fragile shoots below. Even their fallen leaves become gifts, forming a layer of protection against cold and drought, rich with nutrients that seep into the soil. Every part of the elder's body, living or dead, serves the next generation. In autumn, when the light fades and the forest prepares for rest, the mother trees begin to slow their own processes. They draw less water, send fewer sugars upward, conserving what little they have left. Yet even in this season of retreat, they continue to give. Through their roots, they release compounds that nurture fungi, bacteria, and small invertebrates, the unseen custodians of decomposition. These, in turn, make the soil fertile for the young. The elder becomes less of a presence above ground and more of a force below it, dissolving slowly into the network she once sustained. There is no waste in her passing. Her nutrients, her memories, her essence, all are carried forward in the lives that follow. The idea that trees care for one another may seem like a human projection, but it is more than metaphor. The exchange of resources, the coordination of growth, the sharing of information through chemical and electrical signals, all point to a collective intelligence at work. The forest does not think in thoughts, but it remembers, reacts, and responds. Its communication is slow, measured in hours or days instead of seconds, but it is effective. To stand among ancient trees is to be surrounded by this intelligence, an awareness that extends far beyond any single life. There is a quiet lesson in the way old trees nurture the young. They do not hurry their growth or demand anything in return. They give because that is how the forest endures. Their generosity ensures the continuity of the whole. Humans, too, once lived by such wisdom, passing knowledge, shelter, and sustenance from one generation to the next, not as obligation, but as instinct. The forest reminds us of this forgotten truth, that strength is not in dominance, but in care, not in isolation, but in connection. When sunlight filters through the canopy and strikes the young leaves below, it does so through the bodies of those who came before. The light is softened, shaped by the old, before it touches the new. It is the same with nourishment, the same with wisdom. Everything in the forest passes through the elders first. They are the translators between past and future, the keepers of continuity. And when they finally fall, their bodies do not vanish from this role. They become the soil itself, the literal foundation for those who rise in their place. If you ever walk among a grove of ancient trees, pause and listen. Beneath your feet, beneath the silence, there is movement, slow, patient, purposeful. The elders are feeding their children. The air around you carries the breath of countless generations, each one built upon the last. In that moment, you are witnessing a truth older than humankind, that life continues not by competition, but by kindness, not by taking, but by giving. The forest endures because its elders never stop nurturing those who follow. 12. Forest light moves like water light. In the forest does not arrive all at once. It slips in quietly, flowing between trunks and branches like a slow, golden river. It pools where the canopy opens, rippling over moss and fallen leaves. It bends, refracts, scatters, never still, never fixed. In the forest, light moves the way water does, shaping everything it touches, giving life and rhythm to what lies beneath. To walk through such light is to feel its movement on your skin, to watch time itself soften. It is not illumination alone, but a kind of breathing, a visible pulse through which the forest wakes and rests. At dawn, the light begins low and shy. It seeps through the mist in silver beams, striking droplets of dew until they glow like tiny stars scattered across the ground. The trees stand in silence, their trunks half hidden, their crowns bathed in pale gold. The first rays stretch and twist as they move through leaves, filtering into delicate shades of green. Each leaf becomes a translucent window, catching sunlight and releasing it in softened hues. The forest floor brightens by degrees, a slow unrolling of radiance, as though the world were being painted in real time. This gentle arrival of light awakens everything. The air stirs first, trembling with warmth. Birds begin their songs not with precision, but with feeling, their calls rising like bubbles through water. Small insects flicker into motion, wings catching the first glimmers of day. Ferns unfold, their damp fronds glistening. Even the soil releases its scent, rich, dark, alive, as it meets the sun again. Every being responds to this subtle flood of energy, each in its own way. Some reach upward to meet it, others turn inward to preserve the coolness of shade. But all acknowledge it. Light is the forest's unspoken language, understood by every root, every wing, every cell. As the day matures, light grows bolder. It pours through gaps in the canopy, falling in dappled mosaics that shift with every breeze. These scattered patterns, ever-changing and alive, are called sunflecks. For the plants living in the understory, they are brief and precious, fleeting opportunities to drink energy from the sun. A single burst of sunlight lasting only a few seconds can provide enough power to sustain a small leaf for an entire day. And so, the lower forest lives by this rhythm of appearance and disappearance, light and shadow, a heartbeat written in illumination. To stand beneath this moving canopy is to understand patience. The light never rushes. It meanders, curls, waits. Where branches part, it floods the air. Where foliage thickens, it retreats. The forest does not resist its passage, it shapes it gently, guiding it along invisible currents. The effect is liquid, serene. If you watch long enough, you begin to notice that even the shadows here are not truly dark. They shimmer faintly, colored by the green light filtering through the leaves above. In these depths, brightness and darkness do not oppose one another. They blend, just as water and sky merge at the horizon. There is a silence that accompanies forest light, a stillness that feels almost sacred. Perhaps it is because the light itself asks for no attention. It does not blaze or demand. It simply reveals. You see more clearly, but more quietly, the texture of bark, the curve of moss along a rock, the fine threads of a spider's web strung between two twigs. The smallest things become luminous. In this way, light teaches humility. It reminds you that beauty is not found only in what shines brightly, but in what reflects gently. As midday arrives, the forest transforms again. The sun stands high, and its beams descend almost vertically, piercing the canopy in narrow shafts. Dust and pollen drift within them, visible for a heartbeat before disappearing into air. You can see the movement of time itself in those golden columns, how the angle shifts, how brightness deepens, how every hour brings a new geometry of light. The forest is never the same twice. Even in stillness, it changes. The beams shift, like slow rivers, flowing from east to west, tracing the journey of the day. For the creatures that live here, this shifting light is a signal. Butterflies emerge when the warmth becomes steady enough to lift their wings. Lizards find sunlit stones to rest upon. Small mammals begin their daily wanderings, guided by brightness as much as scent or sound. Light governs the rhythm of the forest's breath, the hours of activity, the moments of pause. And as it changes, so too does the air. Morning's cool clarity gives way to the soft, warm haze of afternoon. The scent of pine resin thickens, mingling with the sweetness of flowers now open to the sun. The forest becomes an atmosphere of gold and green, as if it were not merely touched by light, but made from it. By evening, the light begins to slow again. The golden tones deepen into amber, then to rose, then to the softest violet. The forest glows as though lit from within. Shadows stretch, growing long and delicate. and the leaves seem to drink the last of the sun's warmth before letting it go. This is the hour when everything softens: the air, the sound, even thought itself. The boundaries between earth and sky begin to blur, and the trees stand in quiet silhouette against the fading glow. Light withdraws not abruptly, but tenderly, as though reluctant to leave. In twilight, the forest changes its voice. The day's bright noises fade, replaced by the subtle tones of evening, the murmur of wind, the low call of distant birds, the quiet footsteps of night's first wanderers. The last traces of light hang in the air like a breath held too long. It lingers on the bark of trees, along the tips of leaves, and within the surface of streams, where it shimmers like liquid fire. Then, as the sun disappears, the light sinks into the earth, becoming memory. But even in darkness, it is not truly gone. The forest holds it within itself, in the warmth of trunks, in the slow pulse of roots. Like embers in ash, the memory of daylight waits for dawn. At night, the moonlight returns the forest's glow in a new form. Silver replaces gold, coolness replaces warmth. The same branches that glowed amber now shimmer with soft blue light. The forest becomes a place of reflection, of quiet luminosity. Moonlight filters through the same canopy, yet it moves differently, slower, calmer, like the tide of an unseen sea. The forest still breathes light, only in another key. Even darkness here is not absolute. It is a canvas for faint radiance, for the shimmer of stars caught in dew. To say that forest light moves like water is not just a metaphor, it is a truth written in physics and perception. Light travels in waves, bending, reflecting, scattering through droplets of moisture, through particles of dust and pollen, through the trembling edges of leaves. The forest is its ocean, shaping its flow, giving it texture and depth. When you walk beneath the trees, you are wading through this luminous tide, immersed in the energy that sustains everything alive. There is something deeply human in our response to this movement. Our bodies, too, are tuned to light. Our eyes dilate with its brightness, our hearts slow in its warmth, our minds quiet in its rhythm. We have always followed it through open fields, along rivers, into the shelter of trees. The light of the forest reminds us of the first dawns we ever saw, when the world was still wild and new. It brings the memory of beginnings, of calm, of belonging. And so, as you stand beneath the canopy and watch the sunlight shifting across the forest floor, let yourself feel the way it moves, the way it slides across bark, pours through leaves, ripples over your hands. Let it remind you that you are part of the same current, carried within the same flow. The forest and the light are not separate, just as you and breath are not separate. Both move, both change, both return. The light that touches your face today once touched mountains, oceans, and other forests. It will travel on, illuminating new worlds. But for now, it rests here, in this moment, flowing like water through the living green. 13. Moss is the forest's memory foam. Moss is the forest's softest whisper, a living carpet laid down by time itself. It cushions each step, holds the memory of every drop of rain, and breathes in rhythm with the damp earth beneath it. To walk upon moss is to feel the patience of centuries, to move across something older than trees, older even than flowers. Mosses were among the first plants to colonize land, weaving the planet's barren rock into soil. They are the forest's original architects, the quiet keepers of moisture and memory. In their silence lies the oldest form of life that still remembers what it felt like when the world was young. If you kneel close to moss, you'll see that it isn't one surface, but a miniature world, thousands of tiny stalks crowned with emerald leaves, forming dense, spongy colonies that rise and fall like gentle hills. Each plant is small, yet together they build vast green continents across stone, wood, and soil. A patch of moss may look soft and simple, but within it are thousands of microhabitats, droplets of water that cradle microscopic creatures, algae, and bacteria. Beneath its surface, moisture glides between capillaries, circulating nutrients with the same slow rhythm as a heartbeat. The forest's life runs through moss like blood through veins, connecting air, soil, and water in one continuous flow. Moss does not grow tall, yet it holds immense power. Its structure allows it to absorb water up to 20 times its own weight, storing moisture long after rain has passed. In dry seasons, this hidden reservoir sustains nearby roots, fungi, and insects. When the air grows cool and wet again, the moss awakens instantly, turning from brittle brown to luminous green within minutes. It is resurrection made ordinary, happening quietly on every forest floor and fallen log. Unlike many plants, moss has no true roots. It clings instead to whatever surface it finds: stone, bark, soil, even the bones of decaying trees, drawing sustenance directly from the air and rain. It belongs to no one place, no single season. It simply exists wherever water lingers, adapting to the rhythm of the weather. In this way, moss becomes the forest's memory foam, absorbing the impressions of all that passes above it. It remembers the weight of animals, the pattern of rainfall, the footsteps of those who walk through. When pressed, it yields gently, then rises back to form, as if breathing out the trace of what it has just felt. This resilience is its secret strength. Moss teaches the art of recovery, how to yield without breaking, to absorb without losing one's essence. Even under snow or drought, it does not die. It waits, quiet and patient, holding its place until the world grows kind again. The air around moss feels different, cooler and sweeter. This is because mosses release moisture slowly into their surroundings, regulating humidity like a living sponge. In doing so, they create a microclimate that shelters countless species. Small insects take refuge in their folds. Spiders weave fine webs between their stalks. Amphibians burrow within them to stay moist and hidden. Entire food chains begin here, in spaces so small you could overlook them with a glance. A forest without moss would feel bare and brittle, stripped of its softness, its quiet hum of hidden life. Moss gives the forest texture not only underfoot, but in sound and scent and air. Listen closely, and you can almost hear its silence. Moss muffles the world, softening the fall of rain, the crack of a twig, the step of a passing deer. It transforms the forest's acoustics, turning harsh noises into gentle echoes. This is why places covered in moss feel peaceful. The sound itself becomes subdued, absorbed into the living cushion below. It is as though the forest, through moss, has invented its own kind of silence, one that doesn't erase sound but reshapes it into calm. The color of moss is its own language, an unending conversation between green and gold, between moisture and light. In shadow, it glows with deep jade. In sun, it turns to lime and amber. After rain, its surface sparkles with tiny droplets that catch and scatter light like gems. It is no wonder that ancient cultures considered moss a symbol of tranquility, of the earth's quiet endurance. In Japanese gardens, moss is cherished for this reason. It grows where it chooses, uncontrolled, softening stone and human design alike, reminding us that stillness and imperfection are forms of beauty. The forest understands this truth instinctively. It lets moss write softness upon every hard surface. Moss also keeps time differently than other plants. It does not measure life in seasons of flowering or fruiting, but in cycles of wet and dry, growth and rest. A patch of moss can live for decades, even centuries, expanding slowly outward in perfect patience. If left untouched, It forms thick mats that preserve the history of their own making. Layer upon layer of moss accumulates, each generation resting upon the last, compressing into peat the forest's deep archive of time. In those layers lie the pollen of ancient trees, the ash of old fires, the chemical memory of past climates. Scientists studying these layers can read the forest's autobiography, tracing its story thousands of years into the past. In this way, moss is not only the forest's memory foam, it is its literal memory, storing the fingerprints of time in every fiber. Sometimes, after a long drought, when the world seems brittle and silent, the first sign of renewal is moss. The moment rain returns, its dull surface brightens into vivid green, drinking life back in with silent joy. Watching this transformation feels like witnessing hope itself. It happens so quickly, yet so softly, that you could almost miss it. There is no fanfare, no sudden burst, only a slow spreading of color through the landscape, a breath returning to a body. Moss teaches that healing does not have to be loud. It can happen in stillness, in persistence, in simply holding space until the rain arrives again. Even in death, moss gives. When it decays, it releases nutrients back into the soil, feeding the seeds that will one day sprout where it once lay. Its decomposed layers form the richest part of the forest floor, dark, spongy humus that holds water and nurtures roots. Every part of the forest's renewal begins in this softness. Without moss, rain would rush away too quickly, washing soil into rivers. Without moss, seedlings would dry before they could take hold. Moss is the forest's cushion not only for feet, but for life itself. It cradles beginnings, protects endings, and fills the spaces between. If you sit quietly beside a moss-covered stone, you can feel the atmosphere change. The air cools, the noise fades, and a sense of stillness settles over you like a blanket. Time slows, measured only by the slow drip of water from leaf to leaf. This is moss's gift, the ability to draw everything, even thought, into stillness. In its presence, the mind mirrors the forest floor, quiet, receptive, alive in its own soft way. The moss does not strive or seek. It endures, breathes, and remembers. To touch moss is to touch the patience of the earth. Its softness carries the weight of centuries, the memory of rain, the gentleness of persistence. It reminds us that resilience is not hardness, but the ability to remain soft in a harsh world. The moss does not resist what falls upon it. It receives, absorbs, and transforms. And when the sun returns, it glows. The forest knows this lesson well, that strength and tenderness are not opposites, but reflections of the same enduring balance. So the next time you find yourself walking among trees, and your foot sinks slightly into something cool and green, pause, look closely. What you see beneath you is not just ground cover, but the oldest living witness of the world's story. You are standing upon memory, upon breath, upon the quiet persistence that makes life possible. The moss does not speak, but it listens. It records every drop, every shadow, every silence. It is the forest's memory foam, holding the shape of everything that has ever touched it, and slowly, patiently, releasing it back to the world. 14. Some forests glow in the dark. When night settles upon the forest and the last traces of sunlight fade from the sky, the darkness that follows is not absolute. For those who wait and allow their eyes to adjust, another world slowly emerges, one built not of shadow alone, but of light that hides within the darkness itself. Some forests, in their quiet secrecy, glow after sundown. Their radiance is not bright enough to banish night, but soft enough to remind us that life, even when unseen, never truly sleeps. It shimmers quietly beneath the surface, illuminating the boundaries between what we know and what remains mysterious. The first thing you notice in such a forest is the faint glimmer beneath your feet. Fallen leaves, half rotted and damp, begin to shine with an otherworldly light, pale green, ghostly blue, sometimes a dim golden hue. It looks almost as if the earth has swallowed the stars and now lets them leak back into the open air. This phenomenon, known as foxfire, is caused by bioluminescent fungi, whose slow-burning light is created through a delicate reaction between oxygen, enzymes, and molecules called luciferins, the same chemical magic that makes fireflies glow. But here, the light belongs to decay. It comes from the quiet work of fungi feeding on wood, transforming the dead into nourishment for the living. What looks like magic is really metabolism, the gentle radiance of decomposition. To see it is to feel suspended in time. The light of foxfire is constant yet pulsing, unwavering yet alive. It does not flicker like flame, it breathes. You can walk through such a forest and see streaks of brightness along fallen logs, faint halos around tree roots, even soft glows climbing up bark where the fungus spreads. The color feels too pure to belong to this world, a light that seems to come from within the wood itself, not merely upon it. In the stillness of night, surrounded by that quiet glow, one begins to sense that the forest possesses its own constellations, hidden beneath the canopy instead of above it. The glow is not confined to the ground. In certain tropical forests, entire mushrooms shine small domes of emerald radiance scattered across the floor, like lanterns left by invisible travelers. Some species emit enough light to be seen from a distance, glowing with steady intensity through the darkest hours. Others pulse faintly, responding to temperature and moisture, as if breathing with the forest itself. For the fungi, the light serves a purpose. It attracts insects that carry spores to new places, ensuring the continuation of the species. For the forest, it is another reminder that life and death are not opposites, but partners in a luminous cycle of transformation. When you kneel beside a glowing log, the air feels different. It is cool, damp, and thick, with the scent of wood slowly turning back into soil. If you touch the surface gently, you can feel warmth beneath your fingers, the subtle heat of living chemistry at work. The light itself seems to hum, though you know it makes no sound. It feels alive in the same way breath does, invisible but undeniable. You realize then that the forest is awake, even in darkness, that its pulse continues long after the day's last bird has fallen silent. Not all forest light comes from fungi. Some comes from the smallest creatures that move through it. Fireflies rise from the undergrowth like embers drifting from unseen fires. Their light is more fleeting, more playful, yet it belongs to the same deep rhythm. A single flash may last only a second, but in that second, it speaks of courtship, communication, and survival. When hundreds of them gather, their pulses synchronize, filling the air with waves of light that move through the trees like slow lightning. Scientists call this collective rhythm, entrainment. But in the forest, it feels more like song, a luminous melody written in silence. The glow extends beyond living organisms too. Sometimes, the forest itself reflects the moonlight in ways that seem supernatural. The waxy surface of leaves catches the faintest rays, and mist refracts them into silver beams that drift between trunks. When fog thickens, the light seems to move not in straight lines, but in gentle undulations, like underwater currents. In these moments, the forest becomes an ocean of air and light. The moon filters through it as sunlight does through waves, and everything bark, moss, fern, and stone takes on the sheen of a dream. To stand in such luminescence is to feel both small and infinite. The glowing fungi beneath your feet may be drawing their nourishment from wood that fell decades ago, and yet their light reaches your eyes now, bridging past and present through quiet chemistry. It reminds you that every atom of decay is part of creation, that the energy released in death becomes the light that guides life forward. The forest glows because it remembers, because it continues, because even in stillness, it refuses to stop creating. The bioluminescence of forests serves another purpose too. It slows the heart. There is something deeply soothing about light that does not pierce the dark, but rests gently within it. It asks for no attention, no reaction. It simply exists. When you walk through such places, your eyes adjust, and the world takes on a softer clarity. Every shadow gains depth. Every movement becomes graceful. The harshness of daylight dissolves, leaving only presence, the kind that hums quietly at the edge of awareness. This is how the forest sleeps, not in silence, but in a lullaby of glowing decay and breathing air. There is an ancient intimacy in this kind of light. Long before electricity, long before fire, the first living glow on Earth came from organisms like these: bacteria, fungi, and deep-sea creatures, releasing light into the dark. It was this same chemistry that once filled primordial oceans with faint illumination, guiding early life through the depths. To see foxfire or luminous mushrooms is to glimpse that origin, to witness the persistence of something primordial. The forest, in its nighttime glow, is a living fossil of the Earth's first light. Sometimes the glow is faint enough that you must close your eyes to truly see it. In darkness, vision becomes feeling. You sense the light more than you perceive it, a pressure behind the eyes, a warmth in the chest, a vibration through the soles of your feet. The forest becomes both vast and intimate, a cathedral built from breathing wood and phosphorescent dust. The air thickens with moisture and possibility, and you feel that you are not outside the glow but inside it, part of its pulse. By dawn, the light fades. The glowing fungi dim as sunlight returns, withdrawing into invisibility. The fireflies disappear into the foliage. The moonlight vanishes behind the coming day. What remains is the quiet certainty that the glow was real, that beneath every layer of ordinary green, there lies a secret luminescence waiting for night to uncover it again. The forest, like the soul, carries its own light within, hidden but constant, revealed only when the world grows dark enough to see. So, if you ever find yourself deep within a forest after sunset, resist the urge to reach for artificial light. Let your eyes adapt. Let the dark become your teacher. In time, you will begin to see what the forest shows only to the patient: the faint green shimmer of fungi, the slow pulse of fireflies, the silver wash of moonlight sliding across leaves. In that glow, you will feel the truth that light is never gone. It only changes shape. The forest glows because the world itself still remembers how to shine. 15. The forest teaches stillness. There is a kind of silence that exists only in the forest, not the absence of sound, but the deep presence of quiet. It is the sound of everything living and breathing in balance, the soft hum of a world that knows how to move without hurry. When you walk among trees, this stillness begins to enter you, first through your breath, then through your pulse, and finally through your thoughts. It moves like water through stone, carving space where noise once lived. The forest teaches this stillness without words, without demand, without even intention. It does not ask you to be quiet. It simply is, and in its presence, you remember how to be still. To stand in a forest is to feel time slow. The clock of human life ticks in minutes and seconds, but the forest keeps time in centuries. A tree grows in the same rhythm as a heartbeat slowed to eternity. It expands by millimeters each season, drinks light through its leaves, and exhales oxygen in invisible sighs. Beneath the ground, its roots move even slower, spreading through the soil in a quiet, unseen dance. In such a place, hurry becomes meaningless. Every motion, every rustle, every breeze is deliberate. You begin to feel that stillness is not the opposite of movement, but the truest form of it, motion so steady, it becomes serenity. When the wind moves through the canopy, it does not rush, it glides. The leaves shiver gently, creating a sound like distant water. Sunlight shifts through the branches in slow ripples, painting and erasing patterns on the forest floor. Even the smallest things, the drop of rain descending from a leaf, the sway of a fern, happen at a pace that invites you to breathe differently. The forest, without effort, resets your pulse to match its own. It draws you into its rhythm, into a cadence that predates thought. You are not asked to stop moving. You are asked to move as the world moves. Stillness in the forest is not emptiness. It is awareness. Every inch of space hums with quiet activity, the invisible exchange of gases, the crawl of insects under bark, the flow of sap within trunks, the slow decay of fallen wood returning to soil. None of this breaks the silence. Instead, it deepens it, like currents beneath the surface of a calm sea. To sit among trees is to feel this hidden life envelop you, to sense that the stillness around you is not a pause, but a presence, life in its most balanced form. There is an art to listening in such places. At first, you hear only the obvious sounds, the cry of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the crunch of your own footsteps. But as you settle, those sounds recede into a larger silence, and subtler layers emerge. You begin to hear the small breath of wind moving between blades of grass, the low hum of insects beyond your awareness, the soft rhythm of your own heart joining the forest's pulse. This kind of listening is a kind of surrender. You let go of the need to distinguish between self and world, between your breath and the air you are breathing. The forest listens through you, and you through it. Stillness is not the absence of thought, but the space where thought finds rest. In the forest, the mind's noise slowly dissolves, replaced by a gentle clarity. The trees do not rush to decide what they are. They do not question their purpose. They simply stand, being what they are completely. This acceptance radiates outward, quiet but undeniable. You find yourself mirroring it, your shoulders dropping, your lungs expanding, your awareness widening until even the edges of yourself begin to blur. The forest reminds you of something ancient, that peace is not something you create, but something you return to. The air here carries that lesson. It is heavy with the scent of soil and leaves, thick with moisture and memory. Every breath feels grounding, as if the air itself were teaching you to stay. You realize that stillness is not motionless. It is rootedness. The trees do not wander, yet they are not trapped. Their stillness is a strength that allows everything else to move: wind, rain, creatures, light. It is because they stand so firmly that the forest can flow around them. From their example, you learn that stillness is not withdrawal, but participation in a deeper way. The quiet confidence of being where you are meant to be. Even the light in a forest moves as if it has learned this calm. It drifts through the canopy like a slow tide, spilling across moss, catching the edges of leaves, pooling at the bases of trunks. It never forces its way through. It arrives gently, rests, and leaves in silence. The forest shows you that illumination itself can be peaceful, that light, like wisdom, does not always need to blaze. Sometimes it simply needs to be steady. Animals, too, understand stillness. The deer that pauses at the edge of the clearing, the owl resting unseen in a hollow, the fox standing motionless. Before a step, they know the power of waiting. To move quietly through the world is not to hide, but to belong. They do not hurry because they trust the rhythm of what surrounds them. In the forest, there is no urgency, only readiness. Life unfolds when it is time. When rain comes, the stillness deepens. The forest does not resist it. Leaves bend to receive each drop, trunks darken and shine. The sound of rain in a forest is a kind of meditation, each patter distinct yet part of a collective rhythm. The earth softens, the air cools, and for a time, everything seems to dissolve into a single breathing whole. When the rain stops, the silence that follows is even fuller, as though the world were resting after a long sigh. You can almost feel the forest smiling, replenished, calm, utterly itself. To practice stillness is to learn from this patience. The forest waits without anxiety. A seed may lie dormant in the soil for years, waiting for the right balance of light and moisture to awaken it. Trees endure winters without despair, trusting that spring will return. Even decay, the slow breaking down of wood and leaf, is patient and purposeful. Nothing in the forest hurries, yet everything arrives exactly when it should. This is the rhythm of existence when freed from the pressure of time. As you spend longer in the forest, this stillness begins to follow you beyond it. The pace of your breathing changes, the urgency of your thoughts softens, and the noise of the world feels less absolute. You begin to recognize moments of quiet everywhere, in the pause between words, in the space between breaths, in the gentle stillness that lingers before dawn. The forest's lesson does not end when you leave. It continues in how you move through life, how you listen, how you rest. Stillness is not something you achieve, it is something you remember. The forest does not teach it through instruction, but through presence. You simply enter, stay, and in time, you align with its rhythm. It teaches you that peace does not come from escape, but from attention, from standing quietly within the moment until it opens like sunlight through branches. When you finally leave, the sound of wind through leaves will remain in your ears. The stillness will remain in your chest. It will remind you that beneath every motion of the world, beneath every sound, every thought, every breath, there is this same quiet, steady rhythm. The forest carries it, and so do you. To be still is not to stop moving. It is to move with such grace that the world moves through you, like wind through trees. 16. Forest soil is alive beneath our feet. Beneath the quiet green of the forest lies another world, darker, richer, older. It is the world beneath the roots, the hidden architecture of life that sustains everything above. When we look at the forest, we often see only the visible, the trunks, the branches, the shifting light through the canopy. Yet the true miracle lies below, where the soil breathes. It is not inert matter, not dust or decay, but a living skin wrapped around the planet, a slow, pulsing intelligence composed of roots, fungi, bacteria, and ancient minerals. To walk through a forest is to tread upon something conscious in its own way. The ground beneath you is not still. It hums, it feels, it dreams. The first layer beneath the fallen leaves is soft and fragrant. It is made of what the forest has let go: petals, needles, branches, and bark, all breaking down into simpler forms. This is the forest's memory, dissolving into nourishment. Each fragment that falls begins a transformation guided by countless small hands, beetles, worms, and microbes working in silent coordination. They are the recyclers of light, taking what once basked in the sun and turning it into the foundation of new life. When you kneel and press your fingers into this layer, you touch history becoming future. Just below that surface, the world changes texture. The air disappears, replaced by a dense, humid complexity of roots and filaments. It is here that the forest's hidden body begins. The roots of trees interlace like the threads of a great tapestry, woven through soil, stone, and one another. Around and within them spreads a network of fungal threads so fine they slip through even the smallest grains of earth. These mycorrhizal filaments connect the trees together, forming what scientists call the wood wide web. Through this web, messages travel: water, carbon, nitrogen, and even warnings. When one tree is cut, the others feel it. When drought comes, the network redistributes resources to those who need them most. The soil, in this way, becomes not merely a foundation, but a nervous system, the forest's hidden mind. Each handful of forest soil contains more living organisms than there are stars visible in the night sky. Millions of bacteria inhabit it, alongside fungi, algae, protozoa, and tiny worms. Together, they form the microcosm upon which all life depends. These unseen beings perform tasks beyond comprehension, breaking down dead matter into nutrients, fixing nitrogen from the air, binding soil particles so they resist erosion. They are the architects of fertility. Without them, the forest would starve, and the planet's breath would falter. Every grain of soil is alive with their labor, every breath of air enriched by their invisible exchange. When it rains, the soil awakens even more fully. Water seeps downward, carrying oxygen and dissolved minerals. The microbes stir, the roots drink, and chemical conversations intensify. Nutrients are traded in silence. A molecule of phosphorus in exchange for carbon, a droplet of water for sugar. The balance is perfect, precise, endlessly adaptive. Above ground, the rain sounds gentle and serene. Below, it is thunder, a flood of activity, as billions of tiny lives surge into motion. The forest floor becomes a living sea, its currents invisible but vital. The scent of forest soil is unlike anything else on Earth. It is the perfume of transformation, a blend of rot and renewal, of carbon and rain. That earthy fragrance comes from geosmin, a compound released by actinobacteria when the soil is disturbed. It is a smell that humans evolved to recognize, one that signals health, fertility, and water. Our bodies know it instinctively. It calms us, calls us home. To inhale the scent of forest soil is to breathe the essence of creation, the smell of the planet constantly remaking itself. Roots play their own slow symphony here. They twist and spiral downward, exploring pockets of air, avoiding stones, splitting rock over centuries. Some reach as deep as the height of the tree itself, seeking ancient water that has not seen sunlight in decades. Others remain shallow, spreading wide to collect rain and fallen nutrients. Together, they form a vast underground network that mirrors the canopy above. The forest is symmetrical. In this way, what you see in the sky, you will find echoed in the soil. The trees are the visible half of a whole that continues beneath your feet. Every root is covered in a thin layer of symbiotic fungi, exchanging nourishment for protection. These fungal threads, known as hyphae, are so fine that a single teaspoon of forest soil may contain several kilometers of them. They extend the reach of the roots far beyond what the tree could achieve alone, allowing it to drink from distant pockets of moisture and minerals. In return, the tree feeds the fungi with sugar created by photosynthesis. This partnership is ancient, older than forests themselves, older than flowers, older even than the first land animals. It was this alliance between fungus and plant that made life on land possible. And it continues, unchanged, in every forest that still breathes. Even decay has its purpose here. When a tree falls, it begins its slow descent back into soil. Fungi colonize the wood, their enzymes breaking lignin and cellulose into simpler molecules. Insects arrive to carve tunnels, inviting air and bacteria deeper into the structure. Over decades, the log collapses, sinking into the ground until it becomes indistinguishable from the earth itself. Yet nothing is lost. The carbon once bound in the wood becomes food for roots. The minerals return to circulation. What was once towering above now nourishes what rises next. The soil, in this way, is a great equalizer. It receives everything and forgets nothing. If you could see the forest from below, the sight would astonish you. It would look like a living galaxy, a vast network of glowing filaments, roots and tunnels, all exchanging information in slow light. Every movement of a worm, every breath of a fungus, every pulse of water through capillaries would shimmer with purpose. The soil is not separate from the trees. It is the other side of them, the unseen half of their soul. What we call ground is, in truth, the living continuation of the forest's breath. To walk upon it, then, is an act of reverence. Each step presses against thousands of living forms, each one performing a role in the vast choreography of existence. When you feel the soft give of the earth beneath your feet, you are feeling life, cushioning life. The soil yields because it is alive, because it listens. It absorbs your weight, not as a burden, but as part of the pattern, just another passing presence in the endless cycle of exchange. There is wisdom in this hidden world. It teaches that true support is not rigid but responsive, not hard but alive. The soil holds the forest not by strength, but by adaptability, by its willingness to receive, to transform, to give back. In this way, the forest mirrors the nature of compassion itself. What falls is not wasted. What decays becomes nourishment. What ends becomes beginning. Every grain of soil is a reminder that to sustain life, one must be willing to change. When you next walk through a forest, pause for a moment and look down. Notice the subtle swell of the ground, the small mounds where roots breathe, the way moss clings to damp earth. Feel the life rising through it, the warmth, the faint tremor of movement beneath stillness. You are standing not above the forest, but within it, held by the same living skin that holds every root and seed. Beneath your feet, the soil dreams of rain, of sunlight, of time. It remembers everything, and it gives it all back. 17. Forests heal the air and the mind. When you walk into a forest, something in the air changes before you even take your first breath. The light softens, the temperature cools, and the space between things feels wider, calmer, kinder. The air itself feels thick with meaning, fresh, sweet, somehow more alive. Each inhalation feels like the undoing of a knot you didn't know you carried. Every exhale leaves you lighter, quieter, slower. This is no illusion. Forests truly change the air around them, and in doing so, they change us. They purify, restore, and balance not only the chemistry of the atmosphere, the chemistry of the human heart. The air of a forest is unlike any other. It carries oxygen, of course, the silent gift of leaves that spend each day turning sunlight into breath. But it also carries something else, a complex blend of invisible molecules called phytoncides. These are natural oils released by trees to protect themselves from bacteria, fungi, and insects. When we breathe them in, they interact with our own biology, strengthening our immune systems, lowering stress hormones, and slowing the heart's restless rhythm. The Japanese call this Shinrin-yoku forest, bathing the art of absorbing the forest through every sense. To step into a forest is to step into a natural medicine, distilled not by human hands but by time and life itself. Each species of tree contributes its own fragrance and chemistry to the air. Pines and cedars release sharp, cleansing terpenes that invigorate the lungs. Oaks and beeches give off subtler compounds, rich and grounding. The combination forms an atmospheric symphony of scent and molecule, a living inhalation that soothes the mind and repairs the body. Studies have shown that people who spend time among trees experience lower blood pressure, better sleep, and an increase in the white blood cells that guard against disease. Yet even without data, the truth is self-evident. The forest feels like a cure because it is one. The healing begins with breath. The air in a forest is freshly made, continuously renewed by millions of leaves, filtering carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. This exchange does not happen once or twice a day. It is constant, rhythmic, endless. The trees breathe for us, while we breathe because of them. Their exhalations fill the atmosphere with the purity our bodies crave, and in return, we give back what they need to survive. It is a circular generosity, an unspoken collaboration between lungs and leaves. When we enter a forest, we are not visitors, but participants in this ancient exchange. The air also carries moisture, a soft humidity that soothes the skin and calms the nervous system. It moves slowly here, filtered by trunks and branches, cooled by shade. Wind in the forest never rushes. It drifts. It brings with it the scent of moss, wet bark, and green decay, the fragrance of renewal itself. This air has texture, density. It fills not only the lungs but the senses, pressing gently against the mind until thought becomes quieter. The body knows this feeling well. It remembers that once, long ago, we lived in places like this, surrounded by trees, breathing their breath. To step into a forest is to step back into belonging. The forest heals the air in measurable ways. It traps dust and pollutants on the rough surfaces of leaves and needles. It absorbs nitrogen oxides and sulfur compounds through its stomata, neutralizing the poisons of industry. It captures carbon, the great invisible burden of our age, locking it away in wood and soil where it can do no harm. In this way, every tree becomes both shield and sponge, both purifier and guardian. Together, forests regulate the atmosphere of the entire planet, keeping the air breathable, the temperatures steady, the rain reliable. The breeze that moves across your face in a forest may have been filtered 1,000 times before reaching you. Each molecule of air is part of a story of renewal, written in chlorophyll and sunlight. But the healing of the forest does not end at the edge of the lungs. Once the air enters the body, it begins to soothe the mind. Our physiology responds instinctively. The heart rate slows. The cortisol levels drop. The immune cells strengthen their quiet watch. The mind, long trapped in the noise of modern life, begins to unwind. Thoughts stretch out and breathe. The forest does not silence the mind by force. It teaches it to listen differently. Instead of words, it gives you sound: the wind through leaves, the creak of a trunk, the soft rhythm of your own footsteps. These are not distractions, but invitations, reminders of the rhythm you have always shared with the world around you. There is a reason silence feels different here. In a forest, silence is not empty, it is full of presence. The sound of a single drop of water falling from a leaf becomes a complete event. The pause between bird calls feels thick with potential. Each moment expands, giving the mind permission to rest within it. This is not the absence of thought, but its transformation into awareness. Forest stillness heals not because it hides us from the world, but because it returns us to it. The mind, like the air, becomes clearer the longer you stay. You begin to notice the subtle gradients of color, the dark greens beneath the ferns, the golden glow on a sunlit trunk, the deep blue shadows between trees. You notice how light moves, how sound changes with distance, how your breath begins to match the pulse of the forest. This attentiveness is its own kind of medicine. To pay attention, fully and gently, is to heal the fracture between self and world. The forest gives us that chance to remember that consciousness is not confined within skin, but spread like wind through space. Even your heartbeat begins to mirror the rhythm of the forest. It slows, steadies, falls into step with the world's own tempo. The body recognizes safety here. The parasympathetic system, the network of rest and restoration, awakens. Blood vessels open, muscles unclench, the edges of the mind soften. This is not a mystical reaction but a biological one. proof that our bodies were shaped by places like this. We are, in a very literal sense, designed to breathe forest air. The modern world, with its static walls and synthetic rhythms, has only made us forget when night falls, the air in the forest changes again. It cools, thickens, grows rich with the scent of wet soil. The trees continue to breathe, exchanging gases in reverse, drawing in oxygen, releasing carbon dioxide. Yet even then, the air feels pure. It is cleaner than it was in the day, washed by dew, refined by countless quiet reactions. To breathe at night among trees is to feel time slow to its most natural pace. The stars above shimmer through the canopy like memories, and every breath feels older than speech. Forests heal us not because they perform miracles, but because they remind us of equilibrium. They hold the balance between what is taken and what is given, what is born and what decays. In their air, we find the chemistry of harmony, not perfection, but balance sustained through constant adaptation. When we inhale the forest, we inhale that wisdom. We carry it into our bodies, into our blood, into our thoughts. When you leave the forest, the air of the world beyond feels different, thinner, perhaps, louder. But if you close your eyes and breathe deeply, you can still recall the feeling of that first deep inhalation beneath the trees, the sweetness of green air, the calm that settled like a weightless blanket around your shoulders. That memory lingers in the lungs, in the mind, in the quiet pulse of the heart. The forest has changed you in ways too subtle to measure. It has cleaned not just the air you breathe, but the space within you that breathes it. So the next time you find yourself among trees, breathe slowly and fully. Feel the exchange taking place, your breath mingling with theirs, your mind syncing with their stillness. Remember that each molecule of air you draw into your chest was once part of a leaf and will one day be again. In that shared breath lies the simplest and deepest healing. The forest gives it freely, endlessly, asking only that we breathe with gratitude, that we remember as we inhale, that we are inhaling the living earth itself. 18. The rhythm of rain in the trees. The forest knows rain, the way the ocean knows tide, not as interruption, but as heartbeat. Every drop that falls becomes part of a one. Rhythm older than memory, a slow percussion that fills the air with life. Long before thunder or lightning, the forest feels the rain approaching. The air thickens, the light changes to a silvery hue, the leaves tilt upward, waiting. The scent of earth deepens as the first molecules of moisture kiss the ground, awakening the soil's hidden breath. Then comes the sound, soft at first, like a whisper moving through distance, then closer, fuller, until it surrounds everything. The rain does not arrive as an event, but as a returning. It is the forest inhaling. When the first drops meet the canopy, the sound is scattered and delicate. Water hits leaves and splits, tumbling down in endless combinations of rhythm and tone. Some drops slide along branches before letting go. Others collect at the tips of needles and release themselves only after swelling heavy with patience. Each collision makes a note, a million quiet drips, forming an orchestra with no conductor, yet perfect timing. The rhythm is never constant, but always complete. Beneath it, you can hear the forest's low undertone, the slow groan of trunks stretching with moisture, the whisper of wind adjusting to the new air. Rain, here, is not weather, it is music. The sound of rain in the trees is one of the world's gentlest languages. It speaks to every living thing, each in its own way. To the leaves, it says rest. To the soil, drink. To the roots, rise. To the animals, it brings both warning and peace, a signal to shelter, yet also a promise of renewal. The birds quiet their songs, their feathers slick and shining in the dim light. Insects retreat under bark and stone. The forest's movement slows, until only the rain remains an unbroken pattern of water upon water, steady and endless. Each tree receives rain differently. The tall ones, the elders, catch it first, their wide crowns gathering the sky's gift like great green hands. Some of that water is drunk through the leaves. The rest cascades downward through countless pathways. What we see as simple dripping is in fact an intricate system of distribution. Water slides down trunks, filling grooves and hollows, feeding mosses that cling to the bark. It drips to the lower branches, falls to ferns, gathers in roots, and finally seeps into the soil. In every stage, life takes what it needs. The forest wastes nothing. If you listen long enough, you begin to hear patterns within the rain. The syncopation of heavy drops striking bark, the whisper of mist passing through needles, the deep percussion of larger drops hitting fallen logs. It is a rhythm of both chaos and precision, complex yet soothing, random yet deeply familiar. Human hearts often slow to match it. Brainwaves soften, breath deepens. Something in us recognizes this pulse because it mirrors our own. We are mostly water, after all, and the sound of rain on leaves is the sound of ourselves remembering what we are made of. As the rain intensifies, the forest glows. The greens deepen to emerald and jade, the browns of bark turn almost black, and every surface glistens with a living sheen. Light bends differently now, refracted through thousands of droplets clinging to needles and leaves. The world becomes both darker and brighter at once. Each droplet becomes a lens, reflecting the forest in miniature, an infinite repetition of the same quiet beauty. The air fills with mist, fine and cool, wrapping every branch in silver. It is as if the forest exhales not just oxygen, but light itself, diffused, gentle, endless. Underfoot, the soil transforms. The dry crunch of leaves becomes a soft hush, and the ground yields more deeply with every step. Tiny rivulets form, carrying nutrients downward, threading through roots and stones. These streams, though small, are the lifelines of the ecosystem. They feed the fungi and bacteria that, in turn, feed the trees. The rain connects everything, canopy to ground, trunk to river, leaf to cloud. Even the fallen and decayed are part of its path. Water does not discriminate. It touches all things with the same tenderness. When the storm reaches its height, the sound becomes total. The canopy roars, and yet there is no violence in it. It is power expressed without destruction, movement without malice. The rain beats in waves that come and go, like breathing. Between the heaviest bursts, there are pauses where you can hear the after-sound droplets falling from branch to branch, echoes rippling downward. These pauses are as important as the rain itself. They are the forest's way of absorbing the moment, of balancing movement with stillness. In those moments between showers, the air grows dense with the scent of petrichor, the perfume of wet earth, mixed with plant oils released by rain. It is the smell of renewal, of cycles returning to their beginnings. This fragrance has no equal in the human world. It is both grounding and transcendent, ancient and immediate. Breathing it in feels like remembering something long forgotten, that the planet is alive, and that its aliveness moves through you. Rain in the forest is more than nourishment. It is conversation. It speaks between sky and soil, translating the language of clouds into rivers. It carries messages, minerals dissolved in droplets, seeds dislodged from branches, microscopic life drifting through air. Each fall of water shapes the land just slightly, wearing stone into sand, carving paths for future flow. Even the stillest pond owes its existence to 1,000 gentle impacts, 1,000 tiny decisions made by falling rain. The forest, in turn, listens and responds. Leaves adjust their angles to collect what they can. Roots pulse upward to meet it. The dialogue continues for hours, days, lifetimes. When the rain finally begins to fade, its absence feels almost like silence ending rather than beginning. The drops slow, grow lighter, and then stop, but their presence remains everywhere in the shimmer of leaves, in the dripping sound that lingers, in the cool air that smells like new beginnings. The forest exhales again, its canopy heavy with water, its soil dark and content. Steam begins to rise where sunlight touches wet bark. In that mingling of light and vapor, the forest seems to lift itself back toward the sky, returning what it has received. And then comes the calm, after that soft, impossible quiet when the last droplets fall and the world holds its breath. You can almost hear the gratitude in it, the satisfaction of a long thirst quenched. Birds call again, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. The sound of wings returns. Insects emerge from their shelters. Every living thing seems newly awake, washed clean of fatigue. The forest feels young again, as though the rain has rewound time by a few hours or centuries. To witness rain in the trees is to witness the planet's pulse. It is the rhythm of nourishment, of patience, of return. It teaches that renewal is not a sudden act, but a steady process, one drop, one breath, one moment at a time. It reminds us that even the most ordinary element, water, can carry music, meaning, and grace. When we listen to rain in the forest, we are listening to the same sound that has played for millions of years, unchanged, unhurried. So when next you find yourself beneath trees and the first drops begin to fall, do not run for shelter. Stay. Let the rhythm wash over you. Feel the sound move through the leaves, down the trunks, into the ground, into you. Let it slow your thoughts until only the pulse of rain remains. For in that rhythm lies everything: the breath of trees, the patience of soil, the echo of oceans, and the quiet beating heart of the earth itself. 19. The language of leaves. Leaves are the forest's voice, soft, articulate, ceaseless. They speak not in words but in movements, in light and color, in the subtle murmur of wind through green. If you listen closely, you can almost understand them. The language of leaves is one of the oldest on earth, written long before speech, before song, before even eyes evolved to see their shimmer. They are the translators between sunlight and life, between air and earth, between silence and sound. Every forest is a living library of leaves, each one a page inscribed with light. A leaf begins as a whisper inside a bud. It grows folded, curled inward like a thought before it is spoken. When spring's warmth arrives, it unfurls slowly, delicate as breath. The moment it meets air, it begins to work not with effort, but with grace. Through tiny pores called stomata, it draws in carbon dioxide, the invisible residue of breath and decay. With water rising from the roots and sunlight filtering through the canopy, it begins its lifelong task: to turn what is spent into what sustains. In the silence of photosynthesis, it transforms light into sugar, air into substance, energy into existence. Each leaf is both individual and communal. Alone, it drinks and breathes, but together, they form the lungs of the forest. From above, the canopy looks like a single vast organism, undulating, shimmering, responding to every shift of air and light. It is alive not just in form but in conversation. The leaves move as one, bending toward the sun, turning away from the wind, whispering their flexible prayers into the sky. Their movements are messages, not random but purposeful, communicating water levels, sunlight angles, the approach of dusk. When the wind passes through, the leaves speak more audibly. Their language becomes sound, a rustling that is at once ancient and immediate. Each tree has its own accent. The oaks murmur deeply, their thick leaves brushing together with a slow, measured rhythm. Birches tremble, their smaller leaves creating a quick, silvery shimmer like laughter. Pines whisper in long sighs, their needles producing a sound that seems almost vocal, a low, endless hum that can calm even the most restless mind. To walk beneath them is to enter a conversation already in progress, one that continues whether or not anyone listens. Light, too, is part of this language. A leaf does not simply receive sunlight, it shapes it. It filters and scatters the rays into shades of gold, emerald, and jade. This filtered light, known as green shade, nourishes the understory plants and regulates the forest's temperature. The canopy acts as both shield and lens, allowing just enough light to reach the floor below. Through this dance of brightness and shadow, the forest maintains its balance. Too much sun and the soil dries. Too little and the young cannot grow. Each leaf plays its role in this choreography, turning ever so slightly through the day to catch and share the perfect amount of light. When you stand still and watch, you can almost see the rhythm of photosynthesis, the subtle trembling of energy moving through veins. Inside each leaf, countless chloroplasts shift position as the sun moves, aligning themselves to capture light efficiently. These tiny green structures are the planet's powerhouses, working in silence to sustain every breath we take. Their work is invisible but constant, patient and precise. Each second, a leaf transforms the sun's photons into the sugars that feed the roots, the trunk, the fungi in the soil, the air we breathe. The forest's language is one of generosity, its grammar built from exchange. In the heat of summer, the leaves grow darker, heavier with chlorophyll. Their edges soften, their movements slow. When rain comes, they bow with gratitude, holding droplets that magnify their veins like rivers seen from the sky. The sound of rain on leaves is a kind of punctuation in their endless dialogue, commas, pauses, soft exclamations. Each drop that lands carries a message downward, from leaf to branch to soil, a cascade of communication that feeds everything below. In this way, the leaves are both receivers and messengers, interpreters of the sky's mood. By autumn, their language changes. What was once fluent in green becomes fluent in color. The chlorophyll fades, revealing pigments that have been hidden all along. Reds, oranges, yellows, purples. Each hue is a sentence in the story of transformation. The reds come from anthocyanins, formed as sugars concentrate in the cooling air. The yellows are carotenoids, the same pigments that color dawn and dusk. Together, they turn the forest into a slow-burning fire, one that illuminates the season of letting go. The leaves are not dying, but translating one final message, that beauty lies in release. As they fall, they do not disappear. Each leaf, once released from the branch, becomes a letter written to the earth. Carried by wind, rain, or gravity, it settles upon the soil, joining countless others in a soft, rustling layer. Here, the language of leaves changes form once more. Decomposition begins another kind of communication. This, time chemical. Fungi and bacteria read the fallen leaves, breaking them down into nutrients, translating their stored sunlight into food for the next generation. Nothing is wasted. Even in silence, the leaves continue to speak, telling the soil the story of seasons, of light turned into life, turned into light again. If you pick up a single leaf and hold it to the light, you can see its veins branching like rivers, each one carrying water and nutrients to the outer edges. This network mirrors the pattern of roots underground, a reflection of the forest's symmetry. What happens above is echoed below. The veins of the leaf are the handwriting of the forest, intricate, unique, never repeated exactly twice. They show that even the smallest piece of the forest contains the structure of the whole. The pattern of a single leaf is the pattern of the earth, Leaves also respond to sound, though we rarely notice it. The vibrations of wind, the low hum of bees, even the footsteps of passing animals create subtle movements in their surfaces. Some scientists believe that plants can sense these vibrations and use them to adjust growth or chemical production. If that is true, and all evidence suggests it is, then the forest listens as much as it speaks. Every sound becomes part of its conversation. Our presence, our breath, even our heartbeat contributes to its music. At night, the language of leaves grows quieter but not silent. Dew forms along their edges, refracting the light of the moon. The wind still stirs them, but the tempo slows. The phrases lengthen. The forest dreams in leaf-speak soft rustles, faint movements, a lullaby written in chlorophyll. Even in darkness, photosynthesis does not fully stop. The leaves continue to breathe, to balance oxygen and carbon, to maintain the quiet pulse of life. Their dialogue with the stars continues invisibly, a nocturne of chemistry and grace. To truly understand the language of leaves is not to decode it, but to listen differently. It asks for attention, not translation. To stand beneath their murmuring and simply breathe is to join the conversation. The leaves do not demand that you speak back. They only ask that you hear the tone, the rhythm, the breath of green. Their message is simple and eternal. Life is exchange, beauty is movement, and silence is never empty. So when you next walk through a forest and the wind begins to move, pause, tilt your head upward, listen to the rustling that moves like water through the canopy. It is not noise but meaning, not background but language. Each sound, each shimmer, each falling leaf is a sentence in a story that has been unfolding since the first forests took root upon the earth. It tells you that you belong to this conversation too, that your breath, your gaze, your listening heart are part of the dialogue. The leaves have been speaking all along. The forest waits only for you to hear. 20. The dreaming forest, where all things connect at night, when the wind softens and the last bird call dissolves into quiet, the forest enters its dreaming. This is not sleep as we know it, but a deeper stillness, a slow, breathing consciousness that moves through root and leaf, through soil and sky. Every part of the forest becomes aware in this dream, though not awake. The trees exchange whispers through their roots, the fungi hum softly through their filaments, and the air itself seems to hold its breath. It is as if the entire living world has turned inward, reflecting upon itself. In these hours, when darkness pools like water between trunks, the forest reveals what it truly is, not a collection of separate lives, but one vast interwoven mind. Science calls it ecology. Poets call it soul. The truth lies somewhere between, in the recognition that every living thing here is connected to every other. The roots beneath your feet do not end where one tree stops. They weave, touch, and trade. Through them, signals pass like a maple sends sugar to a shaded sapling. A dying pine releases its remaining carbon into the soil. A fungus carries nitrogen from a distant grove to where it is needed most. Information, nourishment, and warning all move invisibly below the surface, creating a web of cooperation so complex that no single being can be called alone. The forest, in this sense, dreams of unity, and that dream is always real. Even above the ground, this invisible network continues. The air itself is a bridge. Spores drift from log to log. Pollen rides on wind currents across miles. Seeds fall, are carried by animals, and sprout where they land. Every breath you take within the forest carries fragments of countless lives, the invisible dust of bark and spore, the scent of leaf and resin, the breath of trees exhaled through their stomata. You are breathing the forest's memory, inhaling its ancient conversations, and in exhaling, you give something back carbon that will become sugar, water. vapor that will become rain. The boundary between your body and the forest's breath dissolves. You are part of its dreaming, whether you mean to be or not. At this hour, when moonlight sifts gently through the canopy, even stillness feels alive. You can sense the rhythm of the forest continuing beneath perception, the slow pull of water upward through trunks, the silent exhalation of oxygen into the night air, the microscopic movements of creatures unseen. Moths drift soundlessly between ferns. Small mammals scurry under leaves, rearranging soil. The forest is never truly asleep. It rests, but it also remembers. It breathes, but it also listens. This quiet movement, subtle and ceaseless, is the heartbeat of the world. To dream, in the forest's sense, is to connect without effort. The dreaming forest does not imagine, it experiences. Every vibration, every scent, every flicker of moonlight is part of its continuous awareness. It does not separate light from shadow, death from growth, silence from sound. All opposites here are reconciled. The decay that smells rich and dark at your feet is the same process that feeds the glowing canopy above. The fungus consuming a fallen branch will, in time, become part of the soil that feeds the next generation. What dies and what is born are simply phases of the same current. The forest's dream is wholeness, the understanding that nothing exists alone and nothing ends. There is a feeling that arises when you walk through the forest at night, a sensation of being watched but not threatened. It is not the gaze of animals. Though they are there, it is the gaze of the living world itself, perceiving through countless eyes, through senses older than sight. You feel it in the still air, in the tremor of leaves responding to your movement, in the gentle shift of unseen wings above. The forest, in its dreaming, includes you in its awareness. You are no longer an observer. You are part of its thought. If you sit quietly, long enough, something extraordinary begins to happen. The edges between things blur. The sound of wind becomes indistinguishable from the sound of your own breathing. The rise and fall of your chest matches the rhythm of the swaying branches. You can feel the subtle pulse of your heartbeat align with the slow flow of sap within the trees. This is not imagination, it is resonance. All living things oscillate, and when they come into harmony, they share energy. The forest teaches this through experience, not concept. It shows that connection is not something to be achieved, it is something to be remembered. The dream of the forest reaches beyond its borders. Rivers carry fragments of leaves to the ocean, where they become food for unseen lives. Seeds fall upon wind and grow in distant soil, spreading the same consciousness into new places. The rain that gathers in its canopy will one day fall on mountains, deserts, cities. Even the carbon stored in wood will, in time, return to the plate. Sky, joining the cycle again. The forest's dream is not confined by geography. It extends through water and air, through time itself, binding everything in quiet interdependence. Human beings once lived within this dream, without knowing they were separate from it. Our ancestors listened to the forest as a living being, taking only what it offered and giving thanks in return. Over time, we built walls of sound and light around ourselves and called them civilization. Yet the dream remains within us. When we stand among trees and feel our breath slow, it is because that memory is awakening. The forest does not resent our forgetting. It waits. It calls to us through the rhythm of leaves, through the coolness of shade, through the scent of rain. It asks us only to listen, to remember that the dream never stopped, only our awareness of it did. The forest's dreaming is not just a metaphor for peace. It is the world's original consciousness. When we enter it, our own minds begin to mirror its patterns. Our thoughts stop pushing forward and begin to flow. Our awareness widens, expanding outward until it includes the rustle of leaves, the breath of wind, the quiet life beneath the soil. In that widening, fear dissolves. You realize there is nothing to defend because there is nothing truly separate. You belong to the same pulse that moves through root and rain, through star and seed. The dream of the forest becomes the dream of the self, and the difference between them fades. Even when you leave, the forest does not end. It continues inside you, in your lungs, which hold the oxygen it made, in your blood, which carries its minerals, in your mind, which carries the memory of stillness. To remember the forest is to feel it living within you, as though your own body were an extension of its roots. Every act of kindness, every breath of patience, every moment of quiet awareness is the forest dreaming through you. It does not demand worship or understanding, only participation. And so, when you stand once more beneath its canopy, perhaps at dawn, when the first light brushes the leaves and the mist begins to lift, you will know that the forest is still dreaming of rain, of growth, of renewal, of you. The connections that bind all things together hum softly beneath the surface, waiting to be felt. In this web of being, nothing is forgotten, nothing is lost. The forest dreams, and through that dream, the earth remembers itself. If you listen closely, in the hush between the wind and your own breath, you will hear it, the faint, endless murmur of connection, the slow pulse of unity that threads through every root and river, every cloud and creature. It is the sound of existence speaking to itself, the sound of all things being one. That is the language of the dreaming forest. That is the truth that never sleeps.